Sup guys, Fat Archon here, bringing another 40k Tactica. Today we're going over some of the units, combos, and strategies I've been having really good success with demons here in mid-2024 10th edition. I'm playing them a whole lot differently than I did earlier in the edition, so I want to share some of the neat little tricks I've learned along the way. Honestly, I almost feel like I've leveled up with demons. I'm on a whole new level of how to run them, and genuinely I've been having nothing but success. I've been winning the majority of my games by far with these guys. As always, if you guys end up enjoying the content, please consider liking and subscribing. At the very least, leave a thumbs up if you could. That helps, helps the metrics, helps me feel better about myself as well. So, I would appreciate if you just, take the 1 second to hit that little thumbs up. Also, too, legit, if you have any questions, or maybe I missed something, so maybe there's a combo or a unit that you think I forgot about, by all means, leave in the comments below. I legitimately read every single one of those comments, so if you ever ask any sort of question at all, whether it's about demons or just 40k in general, or any army, I play a lot of them, I'm more than happy to help out and answer. You guys have always been super nice and polite. I love getting to talk with you guys, so don't be afraid to reach out if you need anything at all. So I've been running a lot of demons lately, and I genuinely believe that they're one of the top armies at the moment. Especially after, so we just had the points updates. Unfortunately, demons didn't get, anything, literally anything whatsoever. Not a single profile changed in costs, which is kind of lame, because there's definitely, Slaanesh, most of the Slaanesh, units could have used a little bit of love. But I will say, most of the armies that were better than demons got knocked down a peg or two. They all took at least a small nerf. Grey Knights and Necrons and those sort of stuff, they all took some point hikes on some of their key units. And that's actually a pretty big deal, because that helps even out the playing field. I do think you'll start seeing more demons place higher in some of the GTs. They already have a great win rate overall. I believe we're at 51%, I believe, which is just that's fantastic. That's exactly where we need to be. It means we're perfectly fair, but we're not, we're not struggling like CSM have been. Part of what makes them so good is we are exceptional at mission play and scoring. I think we're right up there with Hypercrypt Necrons and Grey Knights. I think we're right behind those guys when it comes to playing the mission and being able to score your secondaries easily. Now, unfortunately, unlike them, we don't have it built into our army, so we do have to pay command points for most of those. Then again, on the other hand, you can deep strike literally any unit in the army, so that is an advantage on its own right there. That's something that no other army really has access to, so that does sort of even the playing field when it comes to that. Speaking of those stratagems, though, we have some insano ones. We have some of the better stratagems in the entire game, in my opinion. A huge one that you're going to use all the time, and a keystone stratagem, is going to be the Realm of Chaos. Basically, what this says is that you can pick up 1 or 2 units. If you're in your Shadow of Chaos, you can pick up 2 units, otherwise it's just one of them. And then next turn, well, okay, excuse me, at the end of your opponent's turn, you pick up 1 or 2 units, and then on your next turn, you have to deploy them. That's actually awesome that you have to deploy them. What that means is that you can get a turn 1 deep strike. You get a turn 1 deep strike with 2 fat, great Unclean Ones. You put 2 great Unclean Ones behind your opponent's deployment zone if you wanted to. You do crazy stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend doing that specifically, but you have the option there. A few other armies do have access to turn 1 deep strikes, but not many are able to do it with multiple units, nor are they able to do it with literally any unit in the army. That's a pretty valuable stratagem to have right there. There's the other obvious stuff as well. You can reposition, so maybe you wipe out a flank, you use your Bloodletter Bomb or whatever, you wipe the flank, there's nothing left on that side, you need to quickly reposition to the other side. Well, guess what? You just pay 1 CP and bada bing, bada boom. You got them right where they need to be. That's a huge deal there. The other thing is going to be line of sight. So if you're using shooting, like Lord of Change, he's exceptional at that. It's going to be incredibly hard for your opponent to hide out a line of sight. So Realm of Chaos, that's a stratagem that you're tempted to use every single turn. Honestly, it's hard for me not to use it every single turn. What I especially like about it is it makes you want to go second. It almost sucks if you go first, because then you lose out on your turn 1 deep strike. Also, too, going second plays into the scoring. Most missions for primaries, if you go second on the 5th turn, on the last turn, you'll score stuff at the end of the game instead of end of your command phase. That is huge when you're able to reposition literally any unit in your army. You're able to reposition them where they need. It also directly keys off of the next stratagem, Denizens of the Warp. Basically, you can deep strike any unit within 3 inches of your opponent. Now, you can't charge after, but that's fine. If you bring a shooty unit, like Lord of Change, he's great for that, with his 5 objective control on top of that, which is, like, huge. Or you bring something cheap and cheerful, like the Flamers. I've had countless games where that's a game winner. In fact, I would say Denizens of the Warp, if you're playing somebody who's, like, not that skilled yet, maybe they're newer or whatever, like, we're not trying to, like, stomp noobs or whatever, but if you're playing a not that smart opponent, or somebody who's not skillful yet, you almost have no excuse to lose at that point. If they don't know how to properly screen their, a home objective, or, you know, even just a central objective, if they're not aware of how to properly screen it from a 3-inch deep striker, like, again, you have no excuse for losing at that point, in my opinion. Yeah, Denizens of War, that's one that 100% you want to keep in your back pocket and try to remember. That is a game winner right there. Another one we got that's really good, Corrupt Real Space. Basically what this does, gives you sticky objective. So, turn 1, what's cool, it works in either player's command phase. Start of either player's command phase, you can use it. So if you bring a unit of scouts, which Seekers are exceptional at with their 9-inch move, you can, on your opponent, even your opponent, maybe they go first, you can scout up your 9-inch, barely touch the objective, sticky it, and then even better, maybe you go first, even better, you sticky it, and then you advance these guys, they move 19 inches further or whatever, and they just move lock your opponent. They can't even get out of their deployment zone on the first turn. That alone can be like a game winner, the move blocking. But sticking the objective, like, so many reasons, that's great. The second part of it, and arguably, like, just as important, if not more important, is that it gives you a 6-inch bubble of your shadow, which is huge. You're gonna, when you fight, like, skillful players, people who are, like, familiar with demons and whatnot, you're gonna realize that, like, keeping your Shadow of Chaos in the no man's land is much harder said than done. Being able to just spend 1 CP to automatically give that to yourself is huge. Suddenly you're getting 5-inch charges out of Deep Strike, assuming you got the instrument. It gives you access to your army abilities, so suddenly you're regening wounds on your super hard to kill Great Unclean One, or better yet, you're plinking wounds off your opponent because they're failing the leadership. It also, speaking of failing leadership, that keys directly off of the next stratagem, and again, this is one of the better stratagems in my eyes. Route of Tear. So this is actually a 2-parter. First part is you pay 1 CP and you get +1 armor piercing. That is actually gigantic. You will use that all the time. If you are in a life or death struggle with a key unit, like, yeah, man, don't be afraid to use that. Even if you just got 1 command point left, like, don't be afraid to use it. I especially like it on the Lord of Change. We'll go over it in more detail when we get to him, but basically, you can use this guy's, like, ignore cover, toss on +1 AP there, and suddenly you're knocking tanks down to, like, a 6-up save, or at the very least, you're taking them to their end ball. I really love that stratagem. Where it really pops off, though, is the second part. If the target is battle shocked, suddenly you get to reroll all of your wound rolls as well. Obviously, that's a huge freaking deal. Again, Lord of Change, that really keys off. Now he's, like, practically guaranteed to take out, like, a Predator or a Vindicator each turn. On average, he does seem to do that, on average, in my experience. Probably, like, 70% of the time he can take out a Predator, it seems like. So, again, that's a key ability. What's cool, too, demons have access to a decent amount of units that can force battle shock tests, so it's not like you're just, like, hoping that they get within your Shadow of Chaos and then you get the -1 leadership. Nah, you can force it with something like a Skull Cannon, or I believe, like, Change Caster. I believe we have, like, 4, maybe even 5 profiles that can do it. So it's not that hard to force the battle shock. There's also ways to stack debuffs, so it's actually kind of easy to get, like, -2 on their leadership, and then people will be failing. They'll be failing it, like, more often than not when you get to that point. Obviously, that plays directly into scoring as well. So, again, don't forget that you got the Drought of Terror, and don't be afraid to use it. Just, quote-unquote, just 1 AP may not seem like the biggest deal, but often it is. Especially with, like, tanks, knocking them from a 5-up to a 6-up is actually a big deal. I've had plenty times where that is, like, just pushes them over the edge of actually getting them killed. So on top of those, some other ones that are very important. I'm going to be Captain Obvious here. Command reroll. So this is like Warhammer 101, right? But what's extremely important for the command reroll is those 5-inch charges. You're going to have something that you think is like a sure deal or whatever. It's not always, guys. I've had plenty of times where you fail the 5-inch charge, and maybe you don't have a command point in reserve. Suddenly you're screwed. You get a unit like Bloodletters, you drop them down, you fail that charge, which will happen from time to time. You might as well just pick them up. Chances are they are, like, super ultra screwed at that point. So if you have an important turn coming up, purposely try to save that command point just in case you need the reroll. Again, you'd be surprised how often that comes up, even when you just have a short little charge like that. Obviously, too, for like 8-inch charges, that'll still happen from time to time. Like, with that reroll, you get up to maybe like I think it's what, like a 40% chance? Something like that, with the reroll. And then finally, probably the best stratagem for this army, and one of the best stratagems in the entire game, Rapid Ingress. If you are not already using Rapid Ingress, you need to add that to your toolbox, and you need to like memorize it back and forth and be thinking about it literally every single turn. A unit like Skarbrand is the perfect guy for it. So he has only, quote unquote, an 8-inch move with no fly. So this guy will struggle with screens. Sure, he'll kill them all, but then he'll just kill himself the next turn often. With the Rapid Ingress, that's suddenly not an issue. You should, or you will, have perfect knowledge of where your opponent's going to be, so you should be able, no issue at all, hide them behind line of sight, and then on your turn, move up, maybe advance and charge with our other stratagem we got. 100%, guys, remember Rapid Ingress. It is ultra important for this army, and arguably is one of the most important stratagems that we have access to. So again, we have some really good stratagems. You know, I guess subtracting the 2 generic ones, we have 4 incredibly good stratagems. That does like sort of become an issue, is we are really CP hungry. You know, if I could, I'd be spending multiple command points every single turn. Definitely like Realm of Chaos, like I mentioned earlier, I'm always tempted to use that. Even turn 1, Sight Unseen, I don't know what my secondaries are or anything. Sometimes I will pick them up. You don't always need to do that, but but for sure, you're going to be CP starved, so make sure you're thinking about when to use them. Try to plan ahead for the next turn. This is definitely sort of a finesse army where you do need to be thinking ahead, because we're pretty fragile. A lot of units you're going to notice are like one and done. I get like nearly tabled all the time, but usually score ahead. I'm not sure if I already mentioned that earlier, but like, don't be afraid if most of your army's dead. As long as you're scoring and like you're accomplishing your mission, you're still good to go there. Alright, one last thing before we get into, you know, the combos and all that sort of stuff. So, coming at you with a kind of spicy take, but might be controversial to some of y'all out there. Mr. Belakor. So, Mr. Belakor, I am extremely guilty of this myself. In fact, my original demon review and like tier list that I went over, I was definitely praising this guy. I was one of those people who said, this, you know, he carries the army on his shoulders. This guy belongs in every single list. Every list I write starts and ends with Belakor. 100% you need to bring him. Well, I gotta be honest, as time's gone on, I've kind of realized he's not that good. And it all revolves around his price. 350 points for what this guy brings really isn't that good. There's multiple things that that you know does that. Now I will say, don't get me wrong, Belakor 1000% can be good, and 1000% can be like a game winner for you. And in fact, if you look at a lot of the GT and like major winning lists that are out there, most of them still run Belakor. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's trash. I've heard some people are like, oh, you know, never ever bring him, he's horrible, blah blah blah. I won't go that far, but I do not whatsoever think you need to include him all the time. There's a few reasons for that. So the big reason you bring him, why I was infatuated with him, is his bubble. So units within 6 inches of him can't be shot from outside of 18 inches. So that is a big deal and seems pretty awesome. But there's multiple issues with that. First of all, usually, or at least the vast majority of it, is only going to work on the first turn. After first turn, you're mainly a melee army, so you're going to be needing to move up yourself anyways. The second part of that is, you know, he's only got a 6-inch bubble. He can't defend everybody. Granted, there is ways to deploy, so he's touching most of your army and they can't be shot. But don't be surprised if like a key unit off to the side gets blasted, because you can't possibly keep him in there. Another huge thing, so only works first turn, right? Well, what if you go first? All of a sudden, you gotta, like, change your game plan, because, shit, now, you know, I gotta measure this out, I gotta be sure I'm exactly 24 inches away, well, shit, he's gonna move 6 inches up, I gotta be really careful with that. Like, it forces you to play differently than how you'd want to. I would also say, as well, you should, most of what he can accomplish with that bubble, you can accomplish with line of sight blocking and, like, smart deployment. You don't need that 18-inch bubble. Now, I will say, there's ways to play with it, especially if you go shooting heavy, and I do think, like, that would be the way to do it. So, Lord of Changes, maybe put Kairos in there. Definitely, like, Soul Grinders are, like, perfect for it. So, if you do, like, shooting and you just, like, kite your opponent, okay, that's, like, an exceptional way to do it, and is the way that I would consider doing it myself. On top of that, his profile, again, for 350 points, that's the main sticking point here. If he was like 300, that would probably be acceptable. 280 would be much better. But, for example, his melee, variable damage is terrible. I can't tell you guys the number of times that, you know, he gets into combat with a Rhino. I'm convinced that, oh, okay, the Rhino's going to be no issue. Nope, he gets stuck there with a stupid freaking Rhino. Of course, they disembark all their heavy hitters next turn, and then they just kill Belakor. That happens all the freaking time. I kind of mentioned it back to the 18-inch bubble. I kind of mentioned it too. Skilled opponents, they know how to play around it. If you were bringing Belakor versus me, and I had like my 3 Vindicators, maybe I'm playing CSM or whatever, I know like, okay, option 1, I just ignore him, whatever. He's 350 point like paperweight back there. Option 2, and more commonly, I'm going to say, okay, I need a go turn, so I'm just going to bring all these guys, make sure they're within 18, and I'm just going to blast them. And you know what's funny? A single Obliterator can, you know, it's rare, but a single Obliterator theoretically could kill this guy. His shooting is like okay. He does have great AP. That's something I really like this guy with. His strike profile on melee is -4. He can even get up to -5, which is nuts though. And then his shooting is -3, so that is fine. But the shooting is still only strength 6, 1 damage, so it's really only good for like clearing out chaff. And again, guys, we're talking about a 350 point unit. So if you're like I was, if you were always running Belakor every single list, so up until just a few months ago, every single list I ran had Belakor. If you've been doing that, genuinely, try dropping them. 350 points can literally buy all of your scoring. You can get a boatload of flamers. You could almost get like 9 squads. I know you can't really, but you could get like 9 squads of Nurglings with that. And those alone, 9 squads of Nurgling should win you the game. Like that's a shitload of scoring right there. No objective control, so that's an issue. But either way, I dare you to try dropping them and just see how it goes. So I'm hoping when we go over some of the tips here in a moment, I'm hoping I can convince you that yeah, he's not an auto-include. Now again, I want to make it super clear. I'm not saying he's bad. And in fact, there's a reason he's still here. Like yeah, he's still usable. He's still serviceable. He's just way too expensive for when you're getting there. I'd way rather bring like Skarbrand for cheaper than him, and then toss in like some Nurglings on top of that, for example. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody by saying that. I would still be curious to hear from you guys. Like, well, yeah, what do you guys think? Have any of you like been trying Belakor lists? I would be very interested in hearing like your guys' experience with it. Maybe you think I'm crazy and like, no, he still is an auto-include. By all means, bring it up. Obviously, the more info we can get out there, the better. So if it helps somebody else in their strategy, then by all means, definitely feel free to share it. So with all that out of the way, we can finally hop into some of the profiles. As you can see, I organize them by gods. I'll try to go over the units themselves, some of the neat little tricks I've had with each of them, and then I'll try to go over some of the combos I use. A lot of these, and man, it's what I love about demons. So many of them, they're almost like a puzzle that you put together, and when you put it together correctly, you can have some pretty spicy stuff happen on the table. So, the first unit to go over, we got the beloved Plaguebearers. So, what's funny, alright, you look at their profile and you go, 5-inch move, T5, only 2 wounds, so it's like, with only a 5-up invul, yeah, so it's sort of like a Space Marine, that's really not that good. But then you gotta realize they're only 110 points. 110 points for 20 T5 wounds is actually fantastic. On top of that, their battle line. So if and when they get knocked to below half size, and you happen to pass a battle shock test, boom, you're just gonna bring back more of them. I've had many games where, yeah, they basically take multiple turns to take out, and then again you start regenning them, and then your opponent just like falls back. He's like, all right, okay, that was stupid. I didn't realize what was gonna happen there. On top of them being like hyper efficient for their points, they give you sticky. So Infected Outbreak, they give you a sticky objective that essentially saves you a command point each turn. That is actually pretty damn valuable. Again, so I'm going to bring it up a lot as we go through it, but that's going to key directly off of Realm of Chaos, your stratagem. So you can turn 1, so obviously you deploy them on the objective, so it starts out sticky. You Realm of Chaos them, second turn, you put them on a, central objective, that ends up becoming sticky. It goes on and on like that. So you can sort of like, hop them across the field, just randomly sticking stuff as you go along. They're really good in that sense. Me personally, so I always pretty much run them alone, but they do have access to leaders, and some of them are actually pretty good. So Epidemius, he's actually like, if you're going really Nurgle heavy, and maybe you're buffing them up with Rotigus and all that sort of stuff, Epidemius suddenly becomes like a very valid attachment. He has 80 points, but that's not horrible if you buff him up. What's ultra valuable with this guy, though, is he gives him a 4-up invul. A 4-up invul is actually a pretty big deal for these guys, because suddenly half the hits that come in are just, like, negated, period. So definitely consider that guy. Another one I've seen some people tech into is Poxbringer. Poxbringer, what I really like about this guy is he has a leadership debuff. So he has a 6-inch aura anytime any unit, not just infantry or whatever, anytime any infantry within unit within 6 inches has to take a battle shock, you subtract 1 from the test. If they're within your shadow, suddenly that becomes -2 from the test. That definitely adds up, and again, keys directly off of like Drought of Terror and other random rules that we got. He also gives you a 5-up critical hit. So I didn't mention it, but these guys all have lethal hits. You are literally doubling their damage output into tough stuff, so anything that's toughness 8 or above. Suddenly you're getting, again, literally double the damage output. Never forget that you can boost up that AP if you really need to, so, you know, I wouldn't really suggest it, unless, again, you're running Rotigus or something. You can buff him up to AP 2 as well. He's pretty cheap. I believe he's 55, maybe 60 points, so he's really not that bad. I've also seen some people just run him solo. Now, me personally, again, I like him cheap. I like him cheap and cheerful, so I don't normally run those, but I've seen some, like, I believe they won a major. Some dude in Australia, I believe it was, did really freaking good. And I'm pretty sure he brought both of these along with Plaguebearers. So, Plaguebearers, I include one in pretty much every single list. Right now, they're just so great at holding your backfield. By the way, alright, here's a pro tip for you guys. So, if you didn't already know this, you know, on top of all the other stuff I went over, they're also great at just, like, screening your backfield. Maybe you're fighting Grey Knights or Necrons or any army like that, and you need to screen. Here's how you do that, like, optimally, in my opinion. You put basically little T's on the end. So I put a T on the end, and then you line these guys out. You would do it 2 inches, so look at how much, like, distance you can gain. You know, I'm not going to take the time to do it exact, but my god, man, you could literally cover just about your entire deployment zone if you deploy them like this. This is almost exactly, if you're screening, this is almost exactly how you should do it. I almost forgot. I'm glad that we're still on these guys. One of the biggest and, like, most important things about these guys is that they're 2 objective control each. Countless times I've had these guys steal an objective from an opponent. With that 3-inch deep strike especially. Maybe they just got like a 5-man little scout squad or something sitting on their home field. And, you know, you went second and it's 5th turn, so you're going to score at the very end of the game. Yeah, dude, 100% that objective should be yours. It's basically yours because you can get, like, you know, up to 20 objective control on there. You can even buff it up to 30 objective control if you bring certain characters along. Plaguebearers, they are excellent. Like I said, I include at least one in every single list I write, and they've done fantastic for me. Alright, next up, Nurglings. So, it's almost like too many things to list when it comes to, like, all the things these guys can do. The huge one, and, like, the obvious one, is going to be scoring. These guys are little scoring, like, monsters. And how I look at Nurglings is I basically look at them not as 40 points, I look at them as 3 victory points. Each squad is like, okay, that's 2 to 3 victory points. A lot of times it's going to be 5 victory points for, like, deploy homers. They're so small, they're such a small squad and so easy to hide in the corner. Again, especially with the 3-inch deep strike, they're basically impossible to screen out for your opponent unless they're, like, going hardcore. And at that point, like, the game's basically yours. The rest of the board should be yours. So you got that. They're huge on scoring. Do be aware they don't have objective control, so they can't do primaries, but secondaries, they're monsters on it. On top of that, I really like them as like little bodyguards, man. So especially if I'm going Nurgle heavy and I'm bringing Great Unclean One and whatnot, I will literally, like, devote a squad to just follow along with the Great Unclean One. Reason being, they have a 6-inch bubble of units in melee, enemy units in melee. They get -1 from their hit roll. That's actually a really big deal. We're not as resilient. Okay, Great Unclean One is like that resilient, but most of our army isn't as resilient as you might hope. What's cool, it's not only Nurgle units that benefit from that, so you could put them with, maybe Lord Changes and best, but like Belakor, you do it, you know, Skarbrand, etc., etc. They work great as little bodyguards. They also can screen, so realistically, this is how I really run them. You know, obviously measured out so they're 2 inches apart or whatever, but suddenly he's really hard to charge. Nurglings are like, oh my god, are they insanely good. On top of that, you got the other obvious one. So they're infiltrators, so you can start them in the middle of the board if you need to. So where that's cool is, again, secondaries. Often I'll deploy at least one of them within within 5 inches, so they only have a 5-inch move, within 5 inches of the center of the board. That way, if I get deploy homers and, maybe I didn't realm a chaos turn 1, or maybe I went first, more likely, I can still get at least 3 points from it, so that's huge. Now, something you need to be very careful of, if you're fighting a melee army, so like World Eaters or CSM, how I normally run them, that sort of stuff, be very careful you're not gifting your opponent free movement. It's super easy. I've had too many times, and that's where I learned to start not being so aggressive with how I deployed them, where you think oh, I got them screened out perfect, they got no chance to go around. Well, here's what normally is going to happen. They're going to shoot you, they're going to kill 1 or 2 bases, and then they're going to get a 10-inch charge or something. And it's really easy to get base to base with just 3 or 4 models, and then the rest of their unit just swings right on past that guy, and you basically gave them extra movement. Maybe it's orcs who normally move 5 or whatever it is. All of a sudden they're getting 10 inches, and then maybe they get to consolidate on top of that. Be really careful. That's something you guys should practice if you're not too used to it. Now, I will say, if it's Astra Militarum is the perfect target for them, because they really don't do melee very well at all. But they still need to get up the board. In that case, yes, do be aggressive, or consider being more aggressive with the move blocking. If you happen to go first, every single time, if I go first and I deploy them aggressively, I'm going to advance these guys and get them as close to your deployment as humanly possible, and I'm just going to block you in turn 1, so that you basically lose an entire turn of movement. And I've had games where that just wins the game alone. I almost feel bad for my opponent, and truthfully, I hate when it happens to me as well, so I know where they're coming from. And again, I'll be bringing it up plenty of times, but don't forget the 3-inch deep strike. So if you, have to move block something, they're setting up for a charge on you, and it's basically going to ruin your entire plan. Don't forget you can plop them down 3 inches right in front of them, and just, make a really annoying roadblock. Nurglings are, super S tier. They're one of the best units in the entire game, honestly. There's a reason that you see them in most, CSM and Chaos Knights and that sort of stuff. There's a reason you see them everywhere. Don't leave these guys at home. If you aren't already running these guys, you need to get your head checked, man. They're they're crazy good. All right, next up we got Plague Drones. So first of all, the model's sick as hell. One of my favorite models, so that that alone is a big plus. Where they're especially good if you're going Nurgle heavy, especially Rotigus, namely Rotigus. If you're bringing Rotigus, then these guys should be an auto include. They basically go hand in hand with each other. And that is all going to come down to their ability. So Death's Heads, they have a shooting attack, 12-inch shooting. So shooting is slightly a rarity for demons. But as long as you hit something, you don't have to wound them or nothing, and it doesn't have to be just infantry, but anything you hit, suddenly, until the end of the turn, so both shooting and melee, the rest of your Nurgle units get to reroll wound rolls. That is a huge deal. Again, it works directly with Rotigus, because he can buff up your Nurglings, or Nurgle, pretty damn good. Speaking of Nurglings, though, 2 damage Nurglings is, hilarious. On top of that, they're very resilient. They're right behind Bloodcrushers when it comes to that, but T8 with 5 wounds, so T8 is awesome, because Strength 4, so Bolters and that sort of stuff, they're really not going to want to target these guys. They're only wounded on 6s at that point. And then 5 wounds, that's an odd amount of wounds to deal with. So 3 damage attacks and 2 damage attacks. It's taking 3 hits getting through. So you'd be surprised at how much firepower these guys can take. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised because, that's their whole thing, or a huge part of them is how resilient they are. Yeah, dude, I absolutely love Plague Drones. I like to bring, if I'm bringing a Nurgle, you don't have to go Nurgle heavy. If you're just bringing a Nurgle Contingent, which often is basically what we're seeing here, so 1 squad of Plaguebearers, a few squad of Nurglings, one of these, and one of these, then yeah, you will definitely get your points worth out of them. That reroll wounds is clutch. Because Nurgle, obviously, they have always, every single edition ever, they struggle with getting the damage through. These guys directly help that, so they're pretty awesome. On top of that, they got the 10-inch move, which is actually a pretty big deal. Good to have, obviously. You can give them the instrument and the icon, so if you needed it, I wouldn't really recommend it, but you can get the 5-inch charges. If you buff them with Rotigus, all of a sudden you're getting 3 damage attacks as well. Don't forget rerolling those wounds. Yeah, these guys are actually really good. And again, the models are 6, so any excuse to get them on the table, I'm okay with that. Ooh, alright, Mr. Great Unclean One. So this guy, when you run him with the enhancement, which is basically the only way you'd ever run him, with the enhancement, he becomes one of the better units in the game. Definitely one of the better units in the army. He essentially, when you get a 4, so with the enhancement, when you're in your shadow, he has a 4-up Feel No Pain. A 4-up Feel No Pain is tantamount to doubling your wounds, so suddenly you have a T12 40 wound equivalent model for only, I believe it's 260 points. That's insane efficiency. On top of that, he gives all your friendly Nurglings, or Nurgle, within 6 inches, he gives them a 6-up Feel No Pain. Now, a 6-up Feel No Pain, it's not the best thing ever, but you gotta remember, Nurgle often has, well, does have a lot of wounds. It's like a 4-wound profile loves that. A 5-wound profile loves that. You have 5 chances, potentially, to get at least one of those. On average, you should get like 0.8, and you'd be surprised how many times you roll a few of them and suddenly they become like a real pain in the ass to deal with. So that is huge. The other part, though, and probably better, Nurgle's Rot. At the end of your movement phase, you can choose any enemy within 12 inches. You don't even have to be able to see them, so you can be on the other side of, like, ruins or the sort. You don't have to see them, but you choose an enemy unit within 12 inches, and you -1 from their toughness. What's awesome about that is that it's not only restricted to Nurgle. You can use that with, like, Skarbrand. And actually, where they really key off is Bloodletters. We'll get into that when we get to them, but Bloodletters, like, love that the most. Reason being, if there's, like, a T10 or a T12 target, all of a sudden you are, you're not, like, doubling. Well, yeah, a lot of times you're going to double their output, because you're going to go from wounding on 6s to 5s, and there's ways to get that up to 4s, which we'll get to as well. So that's a really strong ability to have. The final thing that I really, and the reason I especially love Great Unclean One, is he's super straightforward. You don't have to think about this guy. It really is as simple as you think. You basically just run him to the middle objective, and then he just sits there the rest of the game. Your opponent has to decide, okay, do I want to devote, like, practically my entire army's worth of shooting into this guy, or do I just ignore him and basically just concede, basically 20 primary points? If they don't deal with this guy and he gets to sit on the objective the entire game, 260 points for 20 victory points, like, I am A-okay with that. So I love just how straightforward he is. You don't have to think about him at all. Do be smart with the deployment. I used to just deploy him on the line, which you most certainly can still do, but preferably you can behind cover, at least make it so that, like, most of their army can't shoot him, because you don't want to get him shot too early. He will die. Like, for as tough as he is, he will eventually die. The other day I fought Custodes, and they brought a bunch of those the grab tanks, whatever they're called, and yes, it was quite surprising how fast they murder stuff when they hit on 2s and wound on 3s and all that sort of stuff. But yes, Great Unclean One, he's an excellent model. If you aren't already running one, like, first of all, his model, like, genuinely is, like, ultra sick. It's so fun to paint and looks awesome on the table. People who don't even, like, know anything about 40k will be drawn to this model. So first of all, you got that. But on top of that, guys, he's crazy good. Like, be sure you're bringing him into your list. Again, he's really easy to run as well. Even if he's the only Nurgle model you have, which I have done from time to time, granted, Nurglings are like in every single list, but even if he's the only other one, yeah, you will get your points worth out of this guy, 100%. And again, even if he dies, he's still got your money's worth, because that saved the rest of your army from getting shot. He really is like S tier. Definitely want to bring that guy along. Lastly, we got Rotigus. So Rotigus, he has a few, like, really cool abilities. The one I really like, so Deluge of Nurgle, he has a 6-inch aura. While any enemy unit is within 6 inches of it, you have their move and their objective control characteristics. Now, one thing to bear in mind with the objective control, it's their characteristics. So you don't knock them down to 0. So if there's like a 5 OC, 5-man scout squad or whatever, you wouldn't knock them down to 2.5. They'd still be worth 5. But on battle line units or other random units that have multiple objective control, that is clutch. That makes him fantastic for stealing objectives. I'm going to mention it a million times, but the 3-inch deep strike, that is huge. Again, you can steal a primary from somebody easily with this guy. On top of that, maybe they have crazy moves, so maybe it's like Seekers, which I wouldn't worry much about Seekers, by the way. They die to like a sneeze or whatever, but they normally have a 14-inch move. You knock that down to a 7-inch move, ooh, that's gonna hurt there. On top of that, even more powerful, if you're bringing a lot of Nurgle, is Virulent Blessing. At the start of the fight phase, you can choose one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible. Until the end of the phase, all your Nurgle demons, they get +1 damage. Suddenly you got hilarious 2 damage Nurglings with lethal hits. Like, that alone is awesome. You got 2 damage Plaguebearers for only 120 points. Like, okay, efficiency just shot up through the roof. For your Great Unclean One, he gets 2 damage Sweeps. That's actually a pretty big deal there. Again, remember Drought the Terror, so how you can boost up the AP, like, you're always going to want to, like, take advantage of that when you can. Million reasons that this guy's good. I mentioned it earlier with the plague drones, but this guy keys directly off of them. If you're re-rolling all your wounds and you're getting +1 damage on everything, yes, you're totally getting your money's worth. This guy's cheap as well. I believe he's, I want to say 240. He's really freaking cheap. He's cheaper than Great Unclean One with the enhancement, which is like nuts. He himself, because you're pretty much always, just about always going to be buffing or debuffing the unit that this guy's fighting. He himself will go up to 4 damage attacks. You can boost it up to AP4 as well. All of that just goes together. It's so insanely good. I really like Rotigus. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're bringing a contingent, it's not even that many points. You just bring all the units you see here. Bring 3 Nurglings, you know, preferably. They will definitely do some work. Often when I do that, I keep these guys. These guys are like, it's like a buddy cop movie or whatever. They go together, and in fact, they often have Nurglings along the way as well. This is like ultra tough for your opponent to chew through. A lot of times, they just ignore them completely. Although, more often than not, I force them to not be able to ignore it. These guys are like in their face, holding the center of the field. Yeah, man, I really, really like them. Alright, next up we got Tzeentch. So, to start off, we got the Changeling. He was one of the all-stars when the index first came out, and he still is, like, pretty much just as good. He basically had a points nerf, that was it, and he's very fairly priced. I believe he's 90 points, which is very fair for what he has. The main thing is going to be lone operatives, so that's huge. Any and every lone op is always useful. There's many ways you can use them. If your opponent's shooting heavy, and hopefully you got him screened in their field, or you got him distracted on the other side or whatever, he can go out in the midfield and hold an objective there. Otherwise, he's totally honky-dory, just hanging out on your end. If and when you need to get him up the board, just Realm of Chaos him with your stratagem, so there's no issue with like losing mobility in that case. So that's all huge. What I also really like is that he plays into the battle shocks. In multiple ways. So anytime an enemy unit wants to target them, whether it's melee or shooting, so anytime whatsoever, they have to take a battle shock test. If they fail it, not only are they suddenly battle shocked, so you get your Drought of Terror if you need it, they also can't target him at all. So I have had hilarious matches where he gets rushed by like 10 like berserkers or the sword, like something that should just pick him up. It's like, you know, do we even need to roll this? Like, is that pointless? I'm like, well, you need to roll your battle shock, that's for sure. They fail it, and then we just sit around. We just sit around the rest of the time. He does have fly. Does he? You know, I'm surprised. It doesn't look like he has fly. Oh, well, whatever. But you can fall back after that if you need to, assuming he wasn't surrounded. If he was, you would have to take a desperate escape, so that is a little iffy there. But either way, again, you can battle shock him with it. The other ability, Mischief and Confusion. So this one's a little harder to set up because you have to be within 12 inches of him, so you don't really want to be. That, you know, that gets rid of his lone op. But if it does happen, in your opponent's shooting phase, you choose one of their units and you roll a die. On a 2 to 5, they -1 from their hits, so that's pretty awesome. We like that. Basically buffs the rest of your army. On a 6, they can't shoot at all. Now, obviously, if and when that ever happens, like, okay, that's fantastic, man. You do that to like a big Imperial Knight or something, like, my god, that might have just swung the game in your favor. But obviously, it's only on a 6, like, you can't count on that very much. The final thing, he has a flamer. He has a damn good flamer at that. D6 plus 3, strength 6, -1 AP, D3 damage. That's actually fantastic. Again, maybe a little like Shaft unit or Scout Squad or something like that comes into range of this guy. You have the option to overwatch him, and you'd be surprised. Like, he won't always, like, rarely will he wipe the whole squad, but A, it's possible, and B, he'll, like, maul them so they're hopefully below half strength. Suddenly they're rolling battle shocks every single turn. It's actually a pretty big deal. Changeling's pretty damn awesome. He used to be an auto-include, 90 points. It's a little spendy, so like you don't have to include him with every single list like it used to be, but he is still valid in every single list. Maybe you only bring a single Tzeentch unit for some reason. Changeling be, again, very valid for that. As the runner-up, though, we got the Blue Scribe. So he's like the Changeling we have at home. He's only 75 points, so actually very cheap. He has great movement, 12-inch move is actually great, and then 6 wounds with a 4-up invul. He's surprisingly resilient. I will say, he doesn't really bring anything beyond that. He is, like, literally just there to be a lone opper. His melee is hilarious. 4 attacks, only hitting on 5s, only strength 2 with no AP. So he, like, literally does nothing. He's, like, one of the worst melee units in the game. And then for his abilities, he can debuff psychic attacks, which, like, rarely is going to come up. And there's other one, it is cute. At the end of your movement phase, you roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches, and potentially you do between 1 to d6 mortal wounds. So I have had that come up before, where my opponent, he does like a whole bunch of deep strike near me, and I'm able to get this guy within 6 inches of multiple, like, that's cool that you can plink off some wounds, but really it's nothing to rely on, and you especially don't want to get within 6 inches of him, if you can help it. The other thing that kind of holds this guy back, he's mounted, so he can't move through walls. He's not like a beast or an infantry, obviously. So he does have, even though he has 12-inch movement, he'll struggle with like getting around the board at times. Then again, as I'll bring up a million times, we got Realm of Chaos, so it's not like the biggest issue to like get him where you need him to be. But he's totally viable, especially at only 75 points. I have ran him before. Maybe you're like, you're just short of points for Changeling. This guy works perfectly fine as a follow-up, especially if you're just using him as just a lone opera to sit in the back. 2 objective control, while not the best, it's not the worst either. A lot of characters only have a single, so yeah, definitely a valid choice. Preferably bring Changeling, but if you can't afford them or, just want a cool model, because the fluff for this guy is amazing, this guy is, just as valid. Next up, we got the Fateskimmer. So Fateskimmer, he's sort of like a tech pick, and for me, it all relies around his ability. So Rider of the Immaterial Winds. It's only once per battle, but at the end of your opponent's turn, you basically get a free Realm of Chaos. As long as he's not in engagement range, you can add him back to reserves. By the way, you're not forced to deploy him the next turn, too. So you can hold on to him to a few turns if for some reason you need to. But that's awesome. Mobility is like the reason, for at least the style I play, mobility is like the reason that demons do so well, in my opinion. And this guy plays directly into that. He's fairly cheap. He's definitely fairly costed. Only 105 points. For 9 wounds, T7, and a 4-up invul, like, that's actually pretty damn good. His shooting is nothing to write home about. It's only 3 shots at 18-inch range, and then variable damage, so it's really not the best ever. You'll kill, like, a Marine or 2 if you're lucky. His close combat is surprisingly decent, though. He'll have 9 attacks in total, 6 of them being multi-damage. So that is, like, definitely valid there. So definitely give Fateskimmer a look-see if you haven't already. The other thing I like too is that you can attach them to Screamers, which I just think is hilarious. Very rarely do I ever run Screamers, and actually they're totally valid. I was going to include them originally. It's just that they're outshone by like Flamers, for example. But it would be if you're going for like a fun list or a fluffy list. Yeah, definitely check out Fateskimmer then. Next up, we got Flamers. So these are one of my favorite units in the army. They're right behind Nurglings, right behind them. And, I'll be honest too, I've been starting to consider, like, maybe I get rid of some of the Flamers and just bring more Nurglings. But the thing is, these guys do have objective control. And they're also, yeah, they have smaller bases, I believe, than the Nurglings. But regardless, they're, like, insanely easy to hide in Deep Strike. So that objective control is huge. These guys probably have won me the most games. For when it comes to the turn 5 stealing their objective or whatever, Flamers are like the all-star for it. For me, I run them MSU, so multiple small units or whatever. So I just run them as a 3-man, only 75 points, which is extremely fair. But they do, like, maybe you do 3-inch deep strike, like, Plaguebearers or whatever. So, that's valid or whatever. But then next turn, your opponent can come back, clap back, and maybe they have enough objective control to steal it back. With Flamers, you can actually kill that unit instead. So, optimally, where, like, just the other day, killing Cultists on their home field objective, they only had, like, 2 bases on there, and the rest were spread out the rest of the way. Obviously they weren't considering the 3-inch deep strike. These guys, while their Flamers, like, really aren't that good into, like, Marine profiles and that sort of stuff, you'd be lucky to kill, like, 2 bases in those cases. Versus Chaff Infantry, like Astra Militarum, Cultists, maybe Sisters of Val, that sort of stuff, like, okay, at that point, you should be able to kill, like, 6 to 8 of them on average, it feels like. So he does exceptionally well when it comes to that. I love Flamers. Again, they play directly into scoring, so often when I deploy, I'll deploy them near the corners, because I'm always, when I'm playing tactical at least, I'm always super paranoid I'm going to get the investigate signals early on. And I've even had games where they basically sit there for 2 turns. So you might be like, oh, that's stupid. You're not getting your points from, first of all, they're really cheap. Second of all, they still play into screening, so my opponent can't deep strike into my field, because I'll usually have Plaguebearers or whoever near the middle. But then you get your investigate signals, then you pick them up on your opponent's turn, do it on the opposite side, deploy homers, whatever it is you need. These guys are like all-stars in the list. And again, unlike Nurglings, you can actually steal objectives and you can actually hurt stuff without having to, I was going to say charge them, but even if Nurglings charge, they're not going to do anything. So they are up there. They're very worth their price. They're almost double the cost of Nurglings, but they're worth every penny of it. Next up, we got Pink Horrors. Pink Horrors, I've been seeing more lists run them. There's certain armies, if they don't have the firepower, they're just gonna ignore them. I've totally had opponents tell me, they're like, what do these guys do? Oh, they split, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm just like, alright, that objective's yours. You know, I can't do anything about that. Anytime they die, anytime a base dies, so long as they're not wiped out in that single unit's attack, you get to roll and basically create more units. And what's cool, you get to make 2 blue horrors. And when the blue horror die, you get to make a brimstone horror. So again, so long as they're not dying in a single shooting attack, you will get your points worth. They seem expensive at 140 points, and they are. Definitely, that is pretty spendy. But if you're able to get the splits off, my god, are they worth it. They're one of the more resilient units in the game. It's like crazy how strong they can be. Well, a really good combo with these guys is I believe it's called Demonic Invulnerability, the stratagem to reroll 1s. If it's a make it or break it attack, so like there's a good chance that they will get wiped, don't be afraid to use that stratagem to reroll the 1s. Anything to keep them alive. The best thing that could ever happen is they knock out 9 out of 10 of them, and you get to roll 9 dice and bring back like 10 freaking blue horrors, and suddenly we're back to square one with them. They have a 4-up invul and 2 objective control. So that is like, again, the 4-up invul is ultra resilient, 2 objective control is ultra useful. You use the 3-inch deep strike, we're going to bring it up a lot, guys. You use that. Suddenly an objective is incredibly hard to flip back to your opponent. Definitely give Pink Horrors a look. I don't think they're auto-include by any means. I definitely would prefer Plaguebearers over them, but they have their uses for sure. Especially if you put them like central of the board or no man's land objectives, that's where they really shine. I wouldn't leave them at home. I think that's kind of wasteful. I'd rather use a cheaper unit for that. They need to like get up in the field, not get in your opponent's face. They're a shooting unit. They're terrible in melee. They're a shooting unit though. But yeah, get them in no man's land and have them like skirmish. Skirmish is the best phrase I'd use. Their shooting is actually, like, okay as well, at least with the Pink Horrors. 2 attacks, strength 4 with AP 1 and 1 damage. Again, you knock it up to AP 2, suddenly that becomes, like, pretty good shooting. So they're basically like it's like a buffed-up bolt gun profile, so not bad in the least bit. Definitely like Pink Horrors, and I've been experimenting with a lot more recently, and I've had, like, actually really good success with them. Next up, we got Soul Grinder. Using Defiler's model, you gotta be aware the the model in TTS sucks for the Soul Grinder, but the Defiler looks alright. Anyways, a huge thing about this, it's a vehicle. In fact, I'm pretty positive, literally the only vehicle in the army, unless you're allying in Chaos Knights. So all of a sudden, you get access to Tank Shock. Strength 16, so you'd be rolling 18 freaking dice and doing mortal wounds on 5-ups. We don't have that much access to mortal wounds, like, at all. There's only, one other unit that really does it, that I can think of off the top of my head. So, Tank Shock is huge. Then, you got the obvious bit of this guy has insanely good shooting. So, I would run him Tzeentch. Nurgle is sort of a runner-up. Nurgle gives you indirect, but it's just like okay. I believe it's only 1 AP as well, so, especially if you're doing indirect, so you're getting the cover save and all that, like, not the best thing ever. This guy, though, he has Warp Gaze. So, it's Blast, 48-inch range, D3, strength 12, -2, D6 plus 2 damage. So this guy is legitimate range anti-tank firepower, which we really don't have much access to. Admittedly, you got Lord of Change and arguably Kairos, but this guy is like, okay, he's definitely not better than Lord of Change at it, but he's right up there. What I really like about this guy, too, he plays directly in with Belakor. Belakor's, 6-inch bubble, if you can't be shot within 18 inches, these guys are perfect for it. With that 48-inch range, you don't have to get within 24 like these guys would. You can stay at, 48 if you really needed to. So they're, like, exceptional at kiting. They are kind of a struggle to move across the board, especially in really, like, terrain-dense boards. This has, like, only 2 lanes, and even then, it'd be debatable if he could fit through that lane right there. So, yeah, you'd have, like, over here and over here. So they can have trouble getting across the board. That said, they do have the Scuttling Walker rule, so they can move over terrain that's 4 inches in height or less. They can also move over friendly infantry, monsters, and vehicles, which is pretty damn, like, awesome there. In real life, too, when you're creating the kit, you choose how to do the legs, so it's actually not that hard to make them much more narrow. He will get, like, longer at that point, but whatever. How I did it is I never, like, glued the legs in. They're basically just, like, blue tack, so I can adjust them. Now, be careful adjusting them during the game or whatever, but before the game, you can model them however you need to at that point. Yeah, Soul Grinder, I think he's legit. What's cool too, beyond the fact that he has Warp Gaze, he also has a Harvester Cannon. So Strength 10, it's only three shots, but Strength 10, 3 damage, AP 1, it's not bad at all. And then he has great melee. Yeah, no, he does have great melee. It's basically 8 multi-damage attacks, which is like, it's basically greater demon levels right there. This guy is awesome. Only 190 points. He's a steal. T11, by the way. That pisses me off with CSM because Defiler's still T10 for some stupid reason. T11's important. There's a boatload of strength 10 stuff out there. That's like basically the standard like anti-tank gun, sorta. Or it's at least like the most common one, in my opinion. This guy, yeah, causes him a lot of trouble. Last thing too, he has a 3-up armor save and a 4-up invul. Crazy resilient with the 14 wounds. Yeah, Soul Grinder, mwah, I love this guy. Not to mention, well, this is Defiler, but the model is ultra sick. I love the model, at least the top half of it. Alright, next up, we got Mr. Kairos Fateweaver. So this guy, I've been recently starting testing this guy a lot more. He keys directly off the Lord of Change. Like, they work hand in hand together. I love it, though. The indirect is invaluable. He's like the only real indirect you have access to. And what's awesome, when you buff him up with Lord of Change, it's Strength 10 minus 3 AP. Only D3 damage, but that's okay. Strength 10 minus 3, hitting on 2s. So even though it's indirect, maybe, you know, you don't see him, so they get a cover save. So you're still, though, hitting on 3s. And never, ever forget, you can buff up that AP with the Stratagem. So even though they get the cover, it's still AP 3. This guy will clear, he'll clear all sorts of stuff. What I really love is Infiltrators, the Space Marine unit Infiltrators that put out the 12-inch bubble if you can't deep strike, yeah, within 12 inches of them. That is terrible. That's one of the worst units we can fight. It'll mess up your day. Well, guess what? This guy is like a direct counter to those. The other thing I especially love with Kairos is, so when it comes to shooting, Lord of Change is the boss. Lord of Change is the best shooting in the army, in my opinion. On average, in my experience, on average, he'll pretty much pick up like a Predator, even a Vindicator each turn, on average, but often he'll leave them with just a few wounds left, 2 to like 4 wounds left or something like that. That's where Kairos comes in really handy. I always save him, so I always shoot with the Lord of Change first, just in case I have a few wounds left over. Bada bing, bada boom, I'm going to use Kairos and be sure to plink off those last wounds. Done that plenty of times. I actually really like it. 24-inch range is not the longest, but it's long enough, especially if you're bringing Belakor along. It's long enough that you can get use and hide away. And again, it's indirect, so yes, 100% you should be able to hide away from it. Don't forget either, it's Blast, so if they have a really fat squad, you're getting even more points efficiency out of it. A lot of stuff to love about this guy. On top of all that, he has 2 really good abilities. The first one, so one head looks forward. So each time you target a friendly Tzeentch demon within 6 inches with the stratagem, you roll a dice. If you roll higher than the battle round, you refund that CP. So that's like a little mini combo right there, and it combos especially well with Realm of Chaos. So if and when I do run these guys together, or even, okay, I don't think I'd ever bring just Kairos. I would always bring him with the Lord Change, but even if it was a different Tzeentch unit, I will pretty much automatically do the Realm of Chaos turn 1. There's like no reason not to. So you target him first, you roll your dice, and then you'll pick up both of them. Pretty sure that's a legal move right there. So that's huge right there. He pseudo gives you CP regen. Like, yes, you have to have the point in the first place to spend it, but otherwise, yeah, he helps with the command point deficiency that we have to struggle with. His other ability, One Head Looks Back. Once per battle, after your opponent uses a stratagem, you can use the ability. After that, they have to pay 1 more from then on out. Now, I will say, rules as written, technically the stratagem would cost 1 more each time they use it. So the first time they use it, after the first time, they pay 1 more. If they use it again, they pay 2 more. If they use it again after that, they have to pay 3 more. I will say, though, I believe WTC, and I've also seen some other tournaments, they've actually ruled that, nah, we're going to do it the normal way, guys. Like, you know, that's a little too powerful. So, truthfully, that's kind of how I've been running it. It's not that big a deal, in my opinion. Though, if you're just playing with friends, or, you know, maybe talk to the TO or something, if they're not using the WTC and all that, yeah, that's actually really damn powerful. The final thing is he has okay melee. 5 attacks, they only hit on 3s, unfortunately, only strength 8, unfortunately, but AP 2 and 2 D3 damage, that's actually pretty decent right there. So he can hold his own, even if he gets caught up with some not too tough a melee squad, but even if he gets caught up that way, yeah, he should be able to pull his weight. Lastly, we got Lord of Change. So I've been playing a lot more Lord of Change. I used to, so we'll get into Slaanesh here in a second. I tried to make Keepers work. I tried for so long to make Keepers work. Then I started bringing Lords of Changes, and it was just stupid. Lord of Change out-damaged a Keeper's Secret pretty much every single time from across the table. Like I mentioned earlier, he, on average, in my experience, will pick up a tank pretty much every single turn. Even Leman Russes, he'll get really close to killing them in just a single shooting phase. You'll always run him with the Rod of Sorcery, so he actually has two attacks. I should have mentioned, you'll always run him with the enhancement. At least if you're only bringing one, you will always, always, always bring the enhancement. When you bring the enhancement, so his datasheet abilities, his baseline one is Friendly Tzeentch, including himself, then 6 inches. You add 1 to the Strength characteristic of range attacks. So just that alone, he goes up to Strength 10. And then you add the enhancement on there, that can give him an additional 2 strength on top of it. So your strength 12 all of a sudden. He'll wound even T12 he'll wound pretty decently. T11 and below though, yes, he'll wound really well. A really, really good trick to know with this guy. So his other ability, Master Magics, anytime he shoots, you have to choose between Ignores Cover, Lethal Hits, or Sustained Hits D3. Originally, I was like, I got hyper fixated on the sustained hits D3 because that's, you do the math or whatever, like, damn, that sounds fantastic. Nah, what you really want to use is Ignores Cover. Ignores Cover, I think, is the money one. Again, especially if you use the Drought of Terror to boost that up, suddenly it's going to be -3 AP, even if they're in cover. It doesn't matter at all. I have had many, many, many times where that came in clutch. I knocked them from a 5 up down to a 6 inch. They rolled their saves and they would have had a bunch of 5s. Plenty of times that comes in clutch. Especially too, often you're on the line of killing the unit or not. Again, they often only have a few wounds left, so that 1 AP is actually a big deal. Also, too, you don't really roll that many 6s. On average, you roll 1.5 6s, and you get like 2 extra on top of that. I bet if you did the math hammer, they probably work out pretty closely, but in my experience, I've had the best success by choosing Norse cover the majority of the time. Like I mentioned earlier, he keys directly off of Kairos. He also keys directly off of Soul Grinder. He keys literally off of every single one of the Tzeentch units, except for maybe Blue Scribes. He keys off of every single one of them with that strength boost. He also works hand in hand with Belakor, so if you're doing the Belakor style, 100%, in my opinion, my playstyle at least, I think you bring at least 1 Lord Change. You might even bring 2 or 3 of them at that point, because with Belakor, I think the 18-inch bubble is best when you have ranged firepower. Lord of Change, he's one of my favorite units. The fact you can shoot at 24-inch range, I should have mentioned the enhancement gives plus 6-inch range as well. When you're shooting across the table, you get 5 turns of damage out of this guy. Whereas your other greater demons like Skarbrand, you're lucky to get 4 turns. Normally it's like 3 turns, and often, sometimes, even just 2 turns of damage out of this guy. Where every single turn you should be able to get at least some value out of Lord Change. He is one of the best greater demons in the army, in my opinion. Alright, next up we got Slaanesh. So, unfortunately, Slaanesh kind of leaves a bit to desire. Overall, for like a lot of her units are pretty damn subpar. Keeper's Secret's perfect example. Keeper's Secret's gonna have trouble to kill anything beyond like a basic Space Marine profile. She'll bounce off like all sorts of stuff. That said, the units you do have access to are actually some of the better units in the book. Some of these are like key to the list, at least the way I run them. A really good unit is the Seeker Chariot. They are damn cheap, is like their main perk. Only 65 points for a 14-inch move, T6, 7 wound, 4-up invul unit. I will say they don't really do much beyond that. Their damage output is like not good at all. It's great for killing screens. So Astra Militarum, Scouts, Cultists, that sort of stuff. Okay, she'll do damn well at that. Especially with anti-infantry 4-up and the dev wounds. Like, okay, that's pretty legit there. Even has a little bit of shooting, only 6-inch range, but still a little bit of shooting. But for 65 points, whether you maybe you're going Slaanesh heavy, like maybe you're doing a theme list or whatever, they make perfect like home field protectors, so they can just sit on your home field. Better yet, they make good move blockers or like skirmishers, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of value to get out of the Seeker. Again, it all relies on that on the price point. If she was any more expensive than that, like yeah, she'd be kind of garbage. I really wouldn't. Again, I wouldn't expect much out of her beyond the cheap profile with 3 objective control as well. Obviously, it's not like the greatest thing ever, but that's pretty decent. You combine her with a greater demon, all of a sudden you got 8 objective control. That'll flip a lot of objectives for you. So definitely a model to keep in mind. Next up, though, we got one of the better characters in the book, one of the better characters in the game, in fact. Syll'esske, she, or I suppose they, for their points bracket, one of the most points efficient models like in the game. And it's all completely down to her delightful agonies ability. The first time the model's destroyed, you roll a dice. On a 2-up, at the end of the phase, she gets back up. So where that's awesome is maybe they kill her in melee, so maybe it's near the end of their turn. Suddenly, even though they got a whole nother unit there ready to kill her, well, she's dead, you can't do anything, and she pops back up at the end of the phase, so she, like, becomes invulnerable at that point. When I run Syll'esske too, so you can attach her to Demonettes. Me personally, I would never do that. I always just run her alone. I think she's like way more efficient that way. Not only can you like hide her and guarantee that she's getting into like base to base and that sort of stuff, but also it just plays into the points efficiency. And I especially like, she's like a pseudo lone op character because of that get up on a 2-up. Now, it will really suck when you roll a 1. I've had that happen to me. It's only happened once, but I have had that happen, and it does suck. He's like, well, shit, I kind of threw away 120 points. Sorta. Because with that Delightful Agonies, it's very tempting to play her, like, pretty risque, and that is the way I do it. I love putting them in the opponent's deployment zone and just causing, like, just causing hell back there, run as a distraction. I really don't care what she does after that, so long as I force you to pull back, like, a good unit or two. Her damage output for her points is like crazy good as well. Axe of Dominion, you got 6 3 damage attacks at AP2, like that's pretty money right there. Scourging Whip, yeah, it's okay, it's 1 damage, but still hits on 2s, help clears out the screens. She also has decent shooting. She has like okay shooting on top of that. An auto-hitting Flamer, you boost it. You pretty much always boost all your shooting ever, but you boost it, you're getting 2d6 auto-hitting, strength 6, -1, 1 damage each. Those are all fine. If you did run her with Demonettes, she does give them critical wounds on a 5-up, so that is pretty awesome. They have dev wounds, so that literally will like double their dev wound output, and often, because they're pretty weak, and a lot of times you're forced into a T8 or even above unit, that'll double the amount of unsavable wounds after that. So there is some value there, but again, I prefer to run her just on her lonesome and go cause some hell. Next up, so Masque of Slaanesh. This is a very techie pick, and she's right up there with Changeling. In some ways, she's better. What I really like about Masque of Slaanesh is A, how small she is, but B, that 9-inch movement on an infantry profile, that's actually pretty money right there. You combine it with her ability, so Eternal Dance, so it's a 2-parter. The first part, so in the fight phase, you choose an enemy unit within 6 inches. You don't have to see them, and you don't have to be in engagement range. You just choose a unit within 6. All your Slaanesh demons, they get +1 to wound versus them. So that's actually great. That'd be a way to make the like Keeper Secrets sort of work. And that's actually when I was running it, like 100% Masque just followed her everywhere. But the second part is better. The second part is each time the enemy unit makes an attack, no matter who they're attacking, it could be, Nurgle or Khorne or whoever, they get -1 to their wound. That is awesome. Anything that makes it harder for your demons to, like, get killed, obviously, like Captain Obvious here, is extremely valuable. If you toss that on with, like, maybe you have Nurglings with Masque of Slaanesh, like, that would be fantastic. -1 to hit and -1 to wound, that's really going to neuter, like really heavy hitters. Super's going to neuter them. Orcs, when they become the terror that they're, like, poised to be, like, I'm pretty sure Orcs are going to dominate the meta. I suppose we'll see. But giving them -1 to hit and the -1 to wound, maybe when they're in their WOG or whatever, that's going to be key to, like, surviving and therefore winning the battle. On top of all that, she can advance, fall back, and charge. I will say, be careful. Sure, she's got fight first, and she's got like 6 2-damage attacks and all that stuff, but she is a T3 4-wound model. Yeah, she got a 4-up invul, but literally, you sneeze on her, she's gonna die. So I honestly, like, I pretty much never put her into combat unless unless I'm positive I'm gonna wipe out my opponent, and they don't have 2 command points for an interrupt. Be extremely careful. If they have an interrupt, 1000%, you don't put her in there. You just get her within 6 inches and have her stand outside and dance all sexy or whatever it is. But but again, she is very valuable. She's right up there with Changeling. I do think Changeling's better. But Masque is just as valid, and I have seen her in a decent amount of tournament lists out there, and I have been running her myself and have very good experiences. Again, the 9-inch move, you basically advance her everywhere. She can advance and charge anyways. Advance her everywhere. She has really good movement on top of the small base and being able to move through walls. Yeah, I really, really like Masque. Ooh, Seekers. These are one of my favorite units in the book. So for sure, like all the Slaanesh except for Syll'esske, you literally like cough on them and they all die or whatever. But that's not why we bring them. The Scout's 9-inch is huge. So I believe I mentioned it in the beginning, but you use the Corrupt Real Space. So before the game even starts, maybe your opponent's even going first, you move your 9 inches. That's usually enough to get just the tip onto the objective. Your opponent's turn starts in the start of his command phase. You do Corrupt Real Estates and Sticky the objective. Boom. Doesn't matter if they die or whatever. You basically paid 80 points to guarantee that objective. Now, that is a little spendy, but where it gets much better than that is if you go first. Now, you do the same thing. You still Sticky the objective, but then you advance these girls, who I'm pretty sure they get to reroll it. Yep, they reroll both advances and charges. You advance these girls, and suddenly you move block your opponent's deployment zone. Their bases are huge. When you're getting the... By the way, you do it like this. Turn them sideways and just get your 2... I know it's a little bit more, but you get your 2-inch. They will cover... This is like probably half the board you can cover. If you're doing like hammer and anvil, like, yeah, that's half the board, if not more than half the board. So many games I've had them do this and essentially win it for me. In my eyes, they're fire and forget. They're basically Suicide Squad. Once they do this, they are dead. Especially for move blocking, like 100% they're dead. That said, they do still have play, even if you don't do it that way. Maybe you front deployed them in the hope that you would go first, but then you find out you're going second. Well, you got a 9-inch move, man. You could even go back. It's not the end of the world if you have to go backwards towards your own deployment zone and hide behind cover. Usually, even better, though, you can hide behind cover, like, near no man's land. So you still get value out of them. And then with that 14-inch move, like, damn, dude, you'll still get some scoring potential, or you should have some scoring potential coming out of them. It's not the worst profile. T4 and 2 wounds, the 5-up invul. So, I mean, like, they have to put, like, okay shooting into them. Like, Balters won't kill that many. Balters will kill a few, but it's not going to wipe the squad. But anything, especially anything with 2 damage, okay, 100%, it's going to kill the squad. Their damage output is alright. The damage output is great for wiping out screens. They're going to have, essentially, well, they do have 5 attacks each. So you're getting 25 attacks with a little 80-point squad. I was singing these guys' praises when they were 90 points, I believe. They might even have been 100 points, and I thought they were fine then. At 80 points, I think they're a steal. If you haven't tried them, like, Scouts is invaluable. Scouts and, Infiltrate's great. Scouts is, like, just as good, especially when you have objective control attached to that profile. If you haven't been running these guys, give them a look, man. Just a single squad does fantastic in a list. Next up, we got Shalaxi. So, she's damn expensive now. 450 points, I think, is overpriced, if I'm being honest. I think 420, would be much more fair. Even 400 would still be usable. That said, I kind of understand why she is so expensive. You gotta realize she has a 5-up Feel No Pain with the T10 and 20 wounds and a 4-up Invul. So she is, next to the Great Unclean One, I believe she is the most resilient model in the army. So she'll eat up a fair amount of firepower there alone, and then the obvious thing that pretty much everybody knows Shalaxi. People who know like barely anything about demons, they know about Shalaxi for the most part. She will murderize any monster, vehicle, or character unit. So she is like insane. Rerolls all hits, all wounds, and damage. She also rerolls the charges versus any of those units. Her profile is insane. 6 attacks, hit on 2, strength 14, AP 3, buff it up to AP 4 if you need, D6 plus 2 damage. Again, you're rerolling all of that. I believe on average, versus like an Imperial Knight even, I believe on average she does like 24 wounds. On average. So she's like basically guaranteed to delete just about anything in the game. You could even put her against like a Warlord Titan or like a Scout Titan, I guess. And there's a good chance, I don't think she'd do it in one turn, but there's a good chance she would win that fight. In fact, I like almost guarantee she'd win that fight. She also has very decent shooting. Unfortunately, it is variable shot, D6 shot on the big profile, but she also has 6 2-damage shots on top of that. So you're getting between 6 to 12 multi-damage shots on top of her 10 multi-damage melee attacks. She's a blender. Where I think she's especially good is if you're a newer player and you're trying to familiarize yourself with demons, I think she's exceptional there. I also think if your opponent's a newer player and maybe they like scare easily, Shalaxi's really good then. Because your opponent will likely be hyper-focused on Shalaxi, as they probably should be. It's a valid target. Because you think if they kill her, that's literally a quarter of your army. You're essentially a quarter of your army they just wiped out. But if you play her right, if you're sneaky, either Deep Striker, personally, I usually put her on the board and just be sure to like hide behind line of sight, or, you know, threaten the hell out of them. Threat Overload with a bunch of Greater Demons, they gotta choose one. Sure, they wipe out a quarter of your points, but they still got Skarbrand and, you know, Belakor coming up right behind her. She does have some valid uses there. But again, I do, if I'm being honest, I do think she's a bit overpriced, so don't throw her in every single list. But, as usual, she can work fine. There's plenty of tournament lists out there that still run her, and they're obviously winning, so, like, you know, you can still make use out of her, for sure. For combos, so we already sort of mentioned them, but you got a few. Turn 1 sticky objective with the Seekers, that's definitely money. That's one I use all the time. I love using it, basically plan to use it often. The other one, Masque with Nurglings. That actually is a really strong combo. -1 to hit and -1 to wound. It's not only for certain gods, it's for your entire army when you do it that way. That is pretty damn money right there. I wouldn't call it a combo, but Syll'esske causing mayhem in the backfield, definitely a fun way to run her, and definitely one to keep in mind if and when you bring Syll'esske along. Ooh, all right. So finally, we got probably the best god in the book, and in fact, honestly, I think it's like no contest. Khorne. Khorne is freaking money, and a lot of that, almost all of that's going to revolve around this guy right here. Rendmaster on Bloodthrone is one of the more insane profiles out there, at least rules-wise. So, speaking of profile, it's actually pretty decent. He has 150 points, so kind of spendy, but for that, you get T9, 9 wounds with the 4-up invul. You also get pretty damn good melee. 9 attacks total, all multi-damage. His ability, though, is insane. Bloodthrone, so at the start of the fight phase, you choose one enemy unit within 18 inches invisible, so you got some pretty damn good range on that. But all your Khorne demons get +1 damage, strength, and AP. That is insane-o good. That is insane-o good. What's really cool, too, you can stack this. You could bring 3 Rendmasters. You could get your Bloodletters. You can get them up to damage 5 and strength 8 on your 120-point little unit. I realized earlier, so originally Bloodletters were 160 points, if you could believe it, but I think GW was like, oh, well, everybody's going to run Rendmaster, you know? It didn't really work out that way at the time. At 120 points, though, the amount of damage and, like, strength and all, and AP, they would be AP 5 at that point. Now, that's a meme thing. I personally, I only really bring 1 Rendmaster in the vast majority of my list, but you can definitely, 2 of them is totally valid. 3 of them, I think it's a little too much, although that would be really damn fun list. Like, give it a shot and let me know how it goes, because that'd be like awesome to run. I would have a lot of fun with that. He himself, like I mentioned, he himself is a little blender. When you debuff the unit you're attacking, he's going up to, he'll have damage 4 and damage 3 attacks combined. He'll have 9 of them. Pretty damn good. And then on top of that, he gets to reroll hits and wounds when it comes to characters and monsters. Excuse me, it's only wound rolls that he gets to do that with. Also, if he manages to kill a character or monster, he himself will regen d6 wounds. So that's actually kind of clever, like not anything at all to rely on. But if a character or a monster, more likely, charges this guy, because most likely you're not going to get this guy in combat. He sits in the back. We'll go over that in a second, but you don't really want him in there. But maybe they deep strike and then they charge you. There's an okay chance he'll survive, and then on the clap back, he's going to clap back. So, very much love Rendmaster. He's a must include. If you're bringing Khorne, it doesn't have to be that many Khorne. It's sort of like Nurgle, where you just bring like a contingent of them. But if you're bringing them, 100% you bring this guy along. I mentioned you don't want him in the thick of things. First of all, you don't want him to die. He'll be prime target number 1. If I was fighting you and you had a Rendmaster, 1000%, I'm going to kill that guy. I'm going to do whatever it takes to kill that guy, because I know how deadly he is. So I would 100% put him in Deep Strike. I Deep Strike him every single time. That way, not only do you keep him safe, but you can also just about guarantee that you can get the line of sight and range to an enemy opponent. 18 inches, that's like almost impossible to screen out. They could mess around with line of sight. Being able to Deep Strike, nah, it's not really an issue. Again, I'm going to bring it up a million times. I already have. Realm of Chaos and the 3-inch Deep Strike, like both of those together also work with this guy. So, yeah, that happens all the time. Drop them down, you delete a unit, you got another unit's, on the other side of the board, you need to get there. Well, just pick this guy up and put him there next turn. Rendmaster, again, auto-include. He's like S++ tier. So good. If you haven't been running this guy, you need to toss him in your list, along with what we're about to talk here in a second, and, yeah, watch the fireworks. Speaking of fireworks, bloodletters. So bloodletters, oh my god, they were too expensive. It left like a bad taste how they were 160 points originally. So it's like, you know, I just automatically discounted them. Like, no, they're trash. I'll never run them. 120 points, like these guys are super fair. So you got the obvious combo of Rendmaster. On top of that, though, we'll get to him here in a bit, but Skarbrand as well. He gives friendly Khorne, so long as they're not monsters or vehicles, I believe it is. Yeah, monsters, vehicles. He'll give them +1 attack. That's basically a 50% damage boost to these guys. You toss on the Rendmaster. I don't even know what percent damage boost it is. It's probably over double. It gets like insano at that point. What I really like in the way to run Bloodletters, like me personally, I would never run them just as is, personally. You attach a character. So you got two characters to choose from. You got Bloodmaster, who gives, he has really good abilities, both of these guys do. He gives +1 to wound, and he also gives you a 6-inch consolidate, which is a huge deal. 10th edition, melee is kind of tricky to position right. It used to be you could willy-nilly go wherever you want. Now you're forced to base, and you have to get into with engagement range to consolidate or get on objective, which is where that's like even more important. 6-inch, that's actually like a huge deal. 3-inch obviously isn't far at all. 6-inch is literally double essentially doubles their movement for that turn. The other option, and arguably just as good, is Skull Taker. So Skull Taker, first of all, he himself is a little murder machine. 6 attacks, strength 6, 2 AP, 3 damage. Don't forget, you can bump him up with Skarbrand and Rendmaster, which is like the way to do it. You bump him up to 7 attacks, strength 7, AP 3, 4 damage. He has precision on top of that and devastating wounds. He can reroll all hits and wounds versus character units. So you'll see that all the time. Maybe it's like, I don't know, Terminator with a leader attached. This guy's going to blend the Terminator. You're going to get rid of their feel no pain or whatever little boost he's giving them. And then once you kill the character, he's going to blend the rest of them. When you boost them with the Rendmaster, which you're just auto going to do, a lot of characters only have 4 wounds. So I've had plenty of times where the very first precision that goes through kills the character. Again, they lose whatever buff, and then he basically wipes out the rest of the squad all on his lonesome. He also, when you kill a character, he regens 1 command point as well, which is, again, CP is something we struggle with. That's something like we really, really, really want. He plays into helping with that. Obviously, it's not easy. You got to destroy a character unit with this guy, so it's not always the easiest thing ever, but will come up from time to time. His other ability, though, and the reason you bring him, he gives, when he's leading a unit, he gives the rest of the unit dev wounds. So you're going to have all that crazy damage 3, AP 3, strength 6, blah, 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 with dev wounds. I forgot to mention as well, Bloodletters at baseline, just built into their profile, they reroll wound rolls of 1. If the enemy unit is below half strength, you reroll all wound rolls. With the dev wounds on top of that, even just rerolling the ones, like, yeah, you're going to get a fair bit going through. Me personally, how I do it, I bring 2 units just like this. So I bring one with Bloodmaster, one with Skull Taker. Skull Taker, he's good for units with really good invols, or just like ultra good saves, period. He's exceptional at that. He gets past the invols and all that. Bloodmaster, on the other hand, with the +1 to wound, he's sort of anti-vehicle or anti-high toughness stuff. Another little combo, so you got the Rendmaster plus Skarbrand. I think they're just like, these 4 together, or these 3, I suppose, just like, they're like made for each other. They're like match made in heaven. But also, Great Unclean One comes in there too. Because, alright, you're going to buff these guys up to strength 6 with the Rendmaster, but you're versed like an Imperial Knight who's T12, so you're still wounded on 6s. Well, you bring them down to T11 at that point, suddenly you're wounded on 5s, and then, remember, we're using the Bloodmaster at that point for the +1 to wound, now you're wounding them on 4s. Guys, it gets crazy. And in fact, Bloodletters are like the direct reason that I think that I quit running Belakor. I realized that Belakor, or these guys, are almost half the cost of, well, with the character, they're almost half the cost of Belakor, yet they do multiples of the amount of damage that Belakor would do on its own. I haven't done the math, but I bet it's like 3 times, maybe like 4 times the amount of damage that Belakor can do just from these guys. Remember, as well, they have an instrument and, of course, the icon, but the instrument, you're getting +1 to your charges. These guys will always go in Deep Strike. That's the way I do it. Always put them in Deep Strike. Make sure you get the Shadow. Like, it's important that you get your 5-inch charge, though. And then, yeah, they're getting a 5-inch charge out of Deep Strike. Insano. I've had so many games where, like, turn 2 or so, my opponents push me way across the map. It's not looking good for Fat Archon. I bring these guys in. They literally wipe out the entire like flank that was getting pushed. Now, I will say these guys die like flies. Bolters, anything like that, are just going to chew through these guys like they're nothing. So they are sort of a one-and-done unit. Even if, so again, they'll devastate a flank all on their own often, but then I just expect them to die afterwards. That said, I've had times, in fact, I think it was my last game, they got knocked down to like 3 models, but they're still around. I get to roll my Battle Shock, they pass it, I'm in my shadow, oop, I bring back 2 of them. So don't forget that they'll regen afterwards. Bloodletters, they're one of the best units in the army. If you haven't been running Bloodletter bombs this edition, give it a shot. Like, seriously, trust me, give it a shot. Again, you gotta bring the Rendmaster, you don't have to bring Skarbrand, but, like, you should. So, give it a shot, trust me, especially with the characters. Again, I wouldn't run them without a character. I think they just, like, yeah, I think it just adds too much to them. If I had to choose between one of them, I do think Bloodmaster might edge it out. I bet math hammer-wise, the dev wounds maybe is better, but that +1 to wound just makes them anti, like, anything. Wounding on 2s with the boosted profiles, like, insane as well, which you'll often get. Yeah, dude, Bloodletters is, like, where it's at. Definitely give them a look-see. And again, once they clear their flank, assuming they didn't die afterwards, like, maybe got really lucky and they didn't get shot off the board after, I'm gonna pick them up and I'm gonna do it again next turn, you know? Just gotta keep doing it until you take care of them. Next up, we got Flushhounds. So their main thing is just that they're cheap and cheerful. They're really cheap, 70 points for the 12-inch move, 2 wounds, T4, only a 5-up save, so they do die really easily. But, again, 70 points and they're beast. That's actually a big deal. So we don't have that much infantry. Like usually most of your stuff is like monsters or mounted. That seems to be the majority of your list. So it is hard to get good movement, especially good, like, fast movement, because all of our infantry is, like, 6-inch, often just 5-inch move. These guys definitely, like, take care of that on their own. And then, when you boost them with a Rendmaster, then you're getting crazy output. Because then you're getting Strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage attacks on a freaking 70-point unit. I really like these guys. I've had a lot of really good success with them. That said, they're not by any means an auto-include. I just think they're like up there. Again, especially if you're running Rendmaster. If you're going Khorne heavy, like, yeah, just a single unit at least of these guys is fan-friggin-tastic. They're really good for objective play as well. Again, the 12-inch movement. Where that's especially good is getting, like, the central objective turn 1. 9-inch move can get you close to it, but it won't get you there. 12-inch move, especially if you, like, advance or whatever, should pretty much get you there. So, yeah, don't sleep on the Flushhounds. I know they die really easily, but, like, again, if you boost them, you're getting your points efficiency out of them. We'll come to these guys in a moment, because, okay, Skull Cannon. So, Skull Cannon, okay, I am of 2 minds of this guy. The big reason you bring him, the whole reason he's even included in this video, is his ability. So Skulls of the Fallen, in your shooting phase, after you shoot, you just choose an enemy unit that was hit, you don't have to wound them or anything, and they have to take a Battle Shock test. Not only can that play into, like, objective scoring and, like, secondaries and that sort of stuff, it also plays in the Drought of Terror. When you're able to get Drought of Terror off, maybe you're able to get it off on, like, your Bloodletters. Oh my goodness. Even though it's pseudo built in their profile, if something's already below half strength, like, you're just going to wipe them anyways. They're not usually there. Usually you just get the reroll wounds of 1. If you're rolling all wound rolls, better yet, with Skull Taker for the dev wounds, yeah, it starts getting crazy at that point. So that there is, like, reason alone to bring him. He's really cheap, too. He's fairly cheap for what you're getting. He's only 105 points, 48-inch range, so he's great at, like, defending your home field. He has okay melee, like, he has, like, acceptable melee. If a crap scout squad or whoever comes in the backfield, he should be able to handle himself. They're definitely not going to kill him, like, in a single phase, at least. My big issue, though, is his shooting is essentially going to do no damage. Reason being, it's only AP 1, so, and with how 10th edition works, like, everybody gets cover ever. Like, it's so extremely hard not to get cover. Like, you'd have to, like, purposely try not to get cover, basically. So, you're essentially getting 0 AP. Sure, it's strength 9. Also, too, it's variable shot output. It is blast, so that helps, but D6 plus 2, like, that's not the best. So, normally, when he shoots something, like, you're lucky to kill a single Space Marine, maybe 2. Like, you would be lucky to kill, like, 2 Space Marines for the most part. Sure, I mean, technically you could boost it up with the +1 AP, but I don't think that's worth it. Especially, too, because you're trying to force the Battle Shock, because you want to milk the reroll wounds, not so much the AP1 when you're running this guy. So I am of two minds. That said, I've seen some players run them, and I've seen them run them really well. It gets, like, really annoying for their opponent. Suddenly they're really worried about getting in line of sight of this dude. So he definitely has some play. I think he's more of like a techie pick. So if you're trying to do like a really clever, like a finesse army or something, Skull Cannon's a pretty decent pick at that point. Next up, alright, Bloodcrushers. One of the best units in the index. They're damn cheap. 110 points is insane cheap. And I would argue, and I think it's just like a fact, they have better resiliency than even the Plague Drones. Sure, they have one less wound and one less toughness, but they have a 4-up invul. I think that more than makes up for those deficiencies. Granted, 2 damage weapons, they in that case, Plague Drones edge ahead. But otherwise, yeah, I think these guys are a little better in that regard. 10-inch move, again, the 4-up invul. They also have a 4-up regular armor save, so you can get to a 3-up if you're in cover. That's actually pretty clever right there. T7, the 4 wounds, really good damage output when boosted with a Rendmaster. Oh, but the key thing is going to be their ability, Brass Stampede. Each time they end a charge move, you choose one enemy unit within engagement range, and for each model in this unit, you roll a d6. On a 4-up, they take d3 mortal wounds. So if you're running a big fat squad of these guys, which is like, that's normally how I do them, they're totally valid MSU, and in fact, like, I've ran them MSU and had great success with them for the resiliency. That's why I brought them originally, and then I realized, like, how much I love them. But if you run them as a blob, and then you include Mr. Skullmaster along, that's going to be 7 dice you roll. On average, 3 to 4 of those should go through, and that would be 2 to 6 mortal wounds on average. Maybe you roll a little hot and you get like 4 go through, that would be 8 mortal wounds on average. Demons don't have that much access to mortal wounds. Like we really don't have that much access to it. These guys are the main keys for that. It's basically like a free tank chalk that's even like, I guess it's just as strong as like a really good tank shock, but it can spike higher is what I'm getting at. Yeah, I think that's money. What's really good, so this is like an advanced technique or whatever. Maybe your opponent has a fight first model. They got like a Masque of Slaanesh. Not that you'd be afraid of her or whatever. But they messed up and they have a screen sitting right next to them. What you can do is charge the screen. Hopefully you wipe them out, or at least kill enough of them that they only like left the model off to this side. Well, start of the fight phase, fight first goes first. They have no targets. Well, okay, now it goes back to you. Well, guess what? I'm within 3 inches, we'll say within 3 inches. Oh, I get to pile into you, and now I'm going to attack before you fight first. It's like an advanced thing. I should make a video on it sometime to show you guys how that works. But do be aware, there's sneaky little clever things you can do with the mortal wounds. With like CSM, for example, with every other army that has access to it, the grenade stratagem is huge. Getting mortal wounds out there, guys, is a big deal. It bypasses 2-up saves, it bypasses 4-up invuls, bypasses like, you have a 2-up invul. It doesn't matter. The mortal wounds is huge. What I like as well, it's not locked to infantry or anything. This could be like magnets you could be charging, and you'll toss a bunch of mortal wounds on them. Very, very, very strong. I would say, too, one of the strongest archetypes for demons right now is, like, the Khorne heavy list. The one I've seen, they brought 3 max squads of Bloodcrushers, and then they tossed in Skullmasters as well. Skullmaster, we're about to go over him. He's not, like, the best thing in the world, but again, he adds a dice to it, and he does boost these guys up. Here, we can just delete Masque. So, when it comes to boosting these guys up, so first of all, he has pretty decent profile himself. 6 wounds with a 4-up save and the 7 toughness, like that's all right. But his damage output is essentially, it's practically like 2 Bloodcrushers crushed together, Bloodcrushers. Basically 2 of those put together, so that's pretty money right there. But then he has 2 abilities. The first one, it's okay. It gives the bladed horns, it gives those dev wounds. If you're able to battle shock them, which is the second part of the ability, if you're able to battle shock them, okay, that's pretty awesome right there. With Rendmaster involved, suddenly you're getting 2 damage dev wounds going through. His second part of his abilities, though, Devastating Charge. Each time his unit finishes a charge move, every enemy unit within engagement range must take a Battle Shock test. So if you got really lucky and you managed to charge like 3 different units, that's 3 units that have to take a Battle Shock test. Suddenly, obviously you used your Drought of Terror at that point. Maybe you got Bloodletters off to the side as well, also charging in there. It gets deadly quick. He's not by any means an auto-include. So if you're running a big fat squad of Bloodcrushers, don't think that you have to include Skullmaster, but he's like completely valid. And again, as always, is a common theme here with Khorne. You include Rendmaster, he's getting up to AP 4 damage attacks himself. Like, yeah, he's totally fair for 100 points. Yeah, I do run him with most. If I'm just bringing like a single squad of Bloodcrushers, me personally, I do bring along Skullmaster. I think, yeah, he's actually pretty dope. Last up for Khorne, we got Skarbrand. Skarbrand himself. This dude is a pimp, and boy does he pimp slap people. I swear, it's funny, man. I swear all the time when people fail their saves, they roll a bunch of ones, and we always joke with each other about, yeah, that guy literally just got splatted by a giant axe. Like, it's like worst case scenario for Magnus or whoever it is. So, on top of his insane damage profile, so baseline strike, 8 attacks, hit on 2s, strength 16, minus 4 AP, 6 damage. So this guy's essentially an anti-everything, especially big vehicles. So even a Land Raider, a Knight, it doesn't matter what they are. Like, they're not safe from this guy. Other greater demons, like, yeah, he's gonna freaking crush them. On top of that, though, he has a very strong ability. Rage Embodied, so 6-inch aura, it doesn't affect monsters or vehicles, so it won't affect himself, but everything else, mounted, infantry, obviously, beast, all that sort of stuff, they get +1 attack. Like I mentioned earlier, that's essentially a 50% buff on damage output for your Bloodletters. That is insano. In fact, it's really not uncommon for, I used to put Skarbrand in Deep Strike, or I'd start him in Deep Strike. These days, I deploy him on the board, just so I have, like, a counter-charge threat, and my opponent doesn't get too cute, because I've had times where they basically overrun me by even turn 2, and it's like, damn, I literally have nothing on the board to fight back with. So I do keep Skarbrand out, but again, you can Realm of Chaos him. But what I'm getting at, I've had plenty of times where I'll drop the blood letters down. They are the ones I want to make the charge, and then I just make sure Skarbrand's within 6 inches of them after they make the charge. Obviously, optimally, I'd get Skarbrand in there, but again, with how 10th works and you're forced to go base to base, that's not always possible. In fact, perfect scenario, I had an opponent, he was in the corner, and so, yeah, when I got in there, even with the just rolling a 5 or whatever it was, there was still no room for Skarbrand. Didn't matter, I still had him within 6 inches, so they still got their boost. And then again, once they do their business, just pick them up on the end of your opponent's turn, do it all over again. He is insano. He's one of my favorite units in the book. I run him in pretty much every single list. His other ability does come up from time to time. Murderlust. So while any unit, even your own unit, so that is kind of a problem, sorta. Your melee army, so not necessarily, but any unit within 6 inches, if they want to fall back, they must take a leadership test. If they fail it, they, obviously can't move. That I've totally had that come up from time to time. You tag like a predator. They only hit on 6s with 3 attacks in melee. They really don't want to be there. They'd rather be shooting other cool stuff. Which in melee they still can shoot, but sometimes it can time up. This guy can prevent that. If they're in your shadow, they got the -1 leadership. Maybe brought a Poxbringer who's nearby, and now they're -2 leadership. Like, it all starts adding up. Skarbrand is money. I mentioned in the very beginning of the video as well, Rapid Ingress was like tailor-made for this dude. Rapid Ingress is like one, if you're not doing the combo with the Bloodletters, or maybe you are, maybe Rapid Ingress him first and then bring in the Bloodletters for some reason, maybe, I don't know, for the angle, something like that. But Rapid Ingress, he's like the perfect target. Now, you might be asking, Fat Archon, why not the Bloodthirster? Why don't I see Bloodthirster here? First of all, Bloodthirster is more expensive, so that's one issue right there. Second of all, I'll show you, his model in TTS is not the best. Here, I'll show you real quick. Third of all, which we're about to see here in a second, they have an oval base. You wouldn't think that's a big deal, but if you're playing competitively, rotating like that costs movement. That's not free. In fact, rotating like that is probably like 3 inches of movement. Like it adds up really quick. Oval base like this, nope, you can spin 360s if you want. It doesn't eat up any movement. Where that's really cool is his wings. Bloodthirster, so these models obviously are a little strange. They normally spray out way far, the wings, and so it's really hard to hide behind line of sight. With this guy, they're somewhat stubby wings, so no, it's really easy to just rotate him so he's not peeking out around cover. I think the circle base versus oval is actually a huge freaking deal and something to bear in mind. I think I already said it, Bloodthirster is also more expensive. He does let you hit on 2s, which is pretty valuable, but I think +1 attack is better than that. Math hammer wise, it would be better. It's like I said, plus 50% versus hitting on 2s. I think it's like 33%. I'm not a math bitch. I'm terrible at math, but I think it's something like that. Lastly, he mainly has variable damage attacks, so I'd much rather have the set 6 damage than deal with the variable that might mess up. And like I mentioned, the model in TTS is extremely ugly. I've searched. I'm sure it's on. I'm sure it's on Steam Workshop. I should probably look, but yeah, I would never want to put that on the table. Back to Skarbrand though, so don't forget Mr. Rendmaster, and where that super keys off is his sweep profile. Suddenly you're getting 16, strength 9, -2, free damage attack. So he'll pick up Possessed, Terminators, it doesn't matter what, any sort of elite infantry. He's just going to pick up entire squads with 16 attacks like that. He does have a cute little flamer as well. It's really not that good. 0 AP, strength 5, only a single damage. It's cute, but it will help clear out screens. Where it's especially valuable, maybe you are, like, directly screened. You got a crap unit you want to get past. In your shooting phase, you get as close as you can. In your shooting phase, you hope that you wipe out, like, enough of them so there's little room for his base to fit through. Suddenly you can go for the long charge, or, you know, you charge this unit, but you're still going to boatload of movement because you come up behind them. So lots of little tricks that you can use as Skarbrand, and again, he keys off with the other units. Buffs your Bloodletters, he buffs, like, literally everything except for monsters, and then Rendmaster directly buffs him as well. Lastly, we got the man himself, the man I used to be infatuated with. So I went over in the beginning, 350 points for what you're getting. It's way too much, man. It's way too much. That said, I already put out all my qualms with him in the beginning, so I'll go over some of the good stuff. You got the obvious, that aura. Well, there's two parts of that aura. First of all, the Dark Master. The area of the battlefield within 6 inches of him is considered to be within your Shadow of Chaos. That's actually a pretty big deal. Skilled opponents are not going to let you easily get your Shadow of Chaos. In fact, a lot of times it's like rare. In fact, it's like the entire game you're struggling to get your Shadow going. This guy directly fixes that. And him doing that, suddenly you're finally getting access, or yeah, you're getting re-access to your army abilities. So you pass leadership, you're regenerating wounds or models. The enemy fails leadership, also gets a -1 leadership on top of that. They're taking mortal wounds. You get your 5-inch charges out of deep strikes, whether it's Bloodletters or Bloodcrushers or whoever else. It could be Plaguebearers, it could be whoever you need. But then the second part of that is how he, shadow form. At the start of each battle round, you choose an ability. You're almost always just going to leave it on the can't be shot within, outside of 18 inches. I pretty much just leave it on that, so I don't have to think about it. I will say, towards the end of the game, especially if you're like, you got them bottled up on their side of the board, okay, change it over. And in those cases, I like to buff my own leadership, because I believe, yeah, you can reroll your own battle shock and leaderships, and I think that is valuable, because the last thing you want is to fail a battle shock and on like your command phase, and suddenly you don't score that objective. That's like the worst thing that could happen. So I do like doing that if you got them bottled up. Otherwise, if there's like any shooting or anything to be afraid of that can like potentially do damage to him, then in that case, yeah, just leave it on the can't be shot. His damage output, it's okay. It's not 350 point okay, but it's like okay. His shooting is decent. It will clear out screens really well. And even like vehicles and whatnot, it'll plink a few wounds off of it. It does have devastating wounds, so that is pretty nice. Ignores cover with the AP3, so, you know, wounds that you do get through, they're going to struggle, unless they have a decent endball, they're going to struggle to save them. And again, you got the dead wound on top of that. 12 attacks, so he will clear, like, an Astra Militarum squad, like, all on his lonesome, just from shooting, so that is pretty valuable there. His melee leaves a lot to be desired. 6 attacks. It is strength 14. AP4 is great. AP4 is pretty rare in this game. Only like Necrons have like a boatload of access to it, my knowledge. I'm not sure other armies really have that much access to it. But this guy gives you easy access to it. It is a variable damage, d6 plus 1, but that's not like the worst. You should average about 3 or 4 damage with each one that gets through, and you will have times where you like spike, only 2 got through, but you do like 12 damage. That will definitely happen from time to time. Sweep profile really sucks. It's it is 14 attacks, and you would wound like Marines and other like infantry along those lines on 2s, but it's only a single damage. AP3, so that is fine there. I don't mean to talk so much smack about him, you know. I just want to make it clear, like, you know, not the best. He does have stealth, So when you're getting shot, at least, he does have -1 to be hit, which is a big deal. -1 to hit is actually a pretty big deal. In fact, I wonder if I should have included the Demon Prince, because he can give all the demons that in a 6-inch bubble. And then again, I don't think Demon Princes are that worth it. They're like budget greater demons. Maybe if you don't own a greater demon, bring one along, but otherwise I'd bring one of these guys every single time. Belakor, I think he meshes mostly with shooting. Soul Grinders especially, and then Lord of Changes as well. You just kite your opponent. You kite them until you kill all their shooting stuff. So you don't want to do it too long. You got to be out there scoring. But you kite them along until their shooting is mainly gone. Then you can start rushing up the board and start murdering stuff. It's a pretty fun playstyle. I'll say too, if you're brand new to demons, or maybe you're just not, you haven't won many games, you're like struggling or whatever. Okay, Belakor is pretty valid. He's a good crutch when you're learning the army. He's like a great crutch in my eyes, especially 10th edition. I think Melee's making a resurgence. I used to say all the time, and believed until not even that long ago, that, like, yeah, Melee sucks. This is 100% a shooting edition, blah, blah, blah. With how good they're doing on terrain, like, I applaud GW and WTC and all the other, like, tournament organizers on how good the terrain has been this edition. Shooting is not nearly as dominant as it used to be. So Melee is definitely a valid tactic to take advantage of. The other awesome thing about his Dark Master aura, so the Shadow of Chaos aura, that means you can always, so long as they're together with him, you can always pick up 2 units. He also will always buff your Lord of Change. Well, it doesn't matter, whoever's enhancements, he will always buff their enhancements if you're toss them on, which you would always do with Lord of Change and Great Unclean One. And even some of the Khorne, if you did bring a Bloodthirster, yeah, I'd throw the Argath, the Blade of Murder, whatever the hell it's called, toss it on there, and he guarantees that you get that buff on there. So definitely some uses out of Belakor. Definitely something to consider running if you're still like learning the demons. Otherwise, I would, guys, if you've been running the entire edition with them, just give it a shot. Just trust me. Get rid of them. Just fill it with like Bloodcrushers or even just a boatload of scoring, etc., and see how it goes. Alright, final thing to go over, so I want to recap the combos, and I'll show you guys some of the lists I was running recently. They're not like hyper optimized, so they could arguably be better, but I'll show you guys some of the ones I've been running. So, alright, for combos, to reiterate, you got the Nurgling Bodyguard. So this will work with any unit, but basically just, yeah, keep Nurglings along. I know they're slow, 5-inch movement, but again, you can deep strike them if you need to, even within 3 inches, but otherwise, you're going to advance them. Their melee is trash. You're never going to use or rely on their melee, so just advance them like every single turn, and they should be able to keep up, especially with Great Unclean One they can keep up. And whether it's in front screening like that, or just off to the side so they get the -1 to hits, like, that alone is pretty money. Where you really boost that up, like we mentioned earlier, you combine that with the Masque. So you do the Masque of Slaanesh with the Nurglings. All enemy, well, not all enemies, she can only choose one, but enemy units within 6 inches of them, they're going to be -1 to hit and -1 to wound. Those combined on something like, on a Great Unclean One, that's just insane. Granted, they will, for the Masque, a lot of times they will already be wounded on 6s, but maybe they're not. Maybe they, they boosted themselves, like they got their own Bloodmaster. They're wounded on 4s somehow, or whatever. Nope, you're back to 5s, or if you're on 5s, you're back to 6s. I think this is a great little combo right there. I actually, really like that little style. The next one, pretty obvious. I mean, we've gone over a bunch of time, but the 3-inch move block is not so much a combo, but just like something to remember, like 100% hammer in your head. 3-inch move block. It can be any unit just about, so long as they cover a good amount of board. So Seekers, maybe they did their job. They stuckied the objective turn 1, but somehow there's no opponents nearby, so they're kind of like dead weight at that point. You can pick them up, and then on your turn, spend the CP to put them down 3 inches in front of your opponent, and again, just spread the board. Better yet, bring a fat squad of like 9 Nurglings and do that. Legit. That can win you a game. I've had plenty of games where the turn 1 or turn 2 move block, whatever it is, will win me the game. And you can see your opponent, how upset they get. Depending on situations, a lot of like better players know how to play around it. They have like good shooting, or often like that's why you want to have fly in your army, or you just got good abilities, etc. Or how I mentioned, you shoot off like half of them and then you just charge around them. There is ways around it, but still annoying. At the very least, it can protect a unit. So you don't even have to deploy in front of your opponent. You can make a shield for your other units. Now, be smart. Make sure they're not within 3 inches. You don't necessarily want them to consolidate. You don't want them to, like, mortal wound. You don't want them to do the tricky mortal wound them and then pile in, etc., etc. But you can totally make body blocks like that. So, 3-inch combo, like, that's one you're going to use all the time. Kairos with his command point region with other Tzeentch units, I love it. When I bring Kairos, he almost always has a lore change with him. I love it. Use the Realm of Chaos, refund it turn 1, do it again turn 2, refund it, most likely turn 3. There's a high chance of refunding it. He's a great way to make sure you're still stocked up on those command points. And again, comboing off with Lord of Change on picking off units that Lord of Change on himself couldn't quite finish off. This guy does a boatload of damage. My god, do I love the lore change. He has so much, he has 15 multi-damage attacks going out. It's pretty intense for, what is he, 200, when he's buffed up, I believe he's 290 or maybe 260, something like, I think it's 290 with the enhancement. Either way, very worth it. Toss Kairos in there, just makes it more worth it. And then pink cores with the Demonic Invulnerability Stratagem, the rerolling ones to your saves is actually pretty awesome. When you have a 4-up save, and it's ultra important that you keep these guys alive, maybe they haven't split all yet, they're fresh, you know, they're virgin, they're virgin pink cores, and something huge is coming in there. You got, I don't even know, Vindicator. I'm not even sure a Vindicator can take them out. With the 4-up invul, probably not, I don't think, but you know what I'm saying. They got some crazy fire output going in there. Don't be afraid. It's worth the risk. It's not always going to work. Rerolling ones isn't that big of a deal. I think it's like, I want to say 16%, but I don't even think it's that high of like extra resiliency they have. But it's still worth the taking the risk for it. If the best thing that can happen is they kill 9 out of 10, all of a sudden you get to roll the dice on all 9 of those. Like, it gets pretty crazy at that point. So that's a really good stratagem to keep in the back of your head. And then Seekers doing the turn 1 sticky objective. I love that strat. I use that one all the freaking time. I think it's a neat little thing. The first time your opponent sees it, you know, a lot of times they'll make a comment like, damn, you can do that? On my turn even? Like, what the fuck, dude? Alright, I'll show you guys. This will be the end. I'll show you guys a couple lists. I'll show you some recent ones I got. Let's see here. Demon Bloodletter Bomba V2. Make sure. Hopefully this is one I want. Yes. Alright. Everybody has their own style of playing. I'm all about like scoring or whatever, so I bring a boatload of chaff. I guess you could argue these things. Almost all these guys over here are chaff. Their sole purpose in life is scoring me points, scoring me primary, hopefully, and then move blocking the opponent. That's like the whole reason they're here. I will normally deploy, or not deploy, but I'll put at least these guys in a deep strike. You include Rendmaster, and of course these Bloodthirsters, Bloodletters, excuse me. Now you gotta remember, so it's half your army, both points and unit count. So you do need to, like, if you're gonna be deep striking half your army, like, do make sure you add it up beforehand. This would be legal, I do believe, though. Do be careful, too, not to put too much stuff into Deep Strike. Because, like I believe I mentioned earlier, I've had times where turn 1, I basically get pushed all the way into my deployment zone. I have, like, barely anything to push back with. I used to put Skarbrand in a Deep Strike, too, but I quit doing that because I realized he's actually pretty important. If they overextend like that, I can punish them, which I, very much like. Beyond that, we got Lord of Change with the enhancement for good shooting. He'll pick up a tank, on average, about a tank per turn across the table. Super invaluable for demons. Great Unclean One. He's straightforward. I love how straightforward he is when you put the enhancement. He's literally just walking up the middle of the board. He's just going to sit there the whole time. Skarbrand, he's basically there to buff up the Bloodletters. Again, I pick him up the turn on my opponent's turn before I know I need him, and then make sure I get him near the Bloodletters. When it comes to deployment, so Flamers I'll put in one corner, Nurglings I'll debatably put, and this is my deployment, I'll put in my other corner, hoping for the Investigate Signals, or like planning for it. Again, I can pick them up if once they accomplish it, or if I get a different secondary, I can pick them up. Plaguebearers always start my home objective just so it's stickied, and then Seekers, they go out into the midfield, obviously, and then Fleshhounds, I like to use them for screening. I kind of keep them behind. I like to screen, like, my own Greater Unclean One. So I mentioned, like, body blocking. I like to use them for that. They're pretty good for that. Alternatively, you can totally go up a flank. Make sure you get on the primary, so it's your score at turn 2. There's definitely, like, valid ways to use it. I'll try to post these lists in the description below in case you guys want to try them out on your end. Let's see. In fact, I know I have an older version. Kairos V2. Yeah, here we go. V6. Can you guys tell? I make a lot of demons lists. This was one I ran a lot, and I had a lot of success with. So it does have Belakor, as you see. Doesn't even have that much shooting. But I have 5 characters, which actually, I forget the name. Off the top of my head, I forget the name of the mission. There's actually a few missions where, I think it's the ritual. No, it's not the ritual. But anyways, there are missions where you need characters, and this list, like, excels at that. I have 2 Seekers. Their sole purpose in life is move blocking and, like, annoying the opponent. And the rest of it, aside from Plaguebearers, everything else is just chaff again. Scoring so many points. I don't care if these guys do damage. I don't care really if you kill them. As long as they got a few victory points each, that's all I care about. If these guys each got 2, that'd be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I guess it's not the best. Realistically, you get way more than that because deploy homers, 5. 5 points right there. Behind enemy lines, there's another 5 points right there. You should get more. Often, the opponent, it happens all the time, in fact, the opponent will ignore him. They see, oh, that's just a small little flamer squad, like, I'm not going to waste my firepower on it. They got a 4-up in-ball, I might whiff it. Obviously, we've mentioned it probably 50 times now, you Realm of Chaos, you pick them up, and you just do it again next turn. You draw your secondaries, oh, what do you know, Plenty of ways to do it. Let's see if I have one more. We can do the Kairos version. It's probably going to be very similar to that list I just showed, though. We'll see. Because I do like the chaff. The chaff contingent, yeah, exactly. The chaff contingent is basically identical. Yeah, this is ultra similar. The only change from the other one was I bring Kairos instead of Great Unclean One. Great Unclean One's pretty damn invaluable. Truthfully, what I do is probably drop Belakor and do that. Granted, this is a more shooty army, so maybe I wouldn't want to do that. I don't even have Bloodletters with this, if you notice, so actually maybe I'll drop Skarbrand. Speaking of, maybe you're not into Bloodletters, which is totally valid. Like I said, because of the start of the index and how bad they were at that point, for the longest time I wasn't really into them. Skarbrand is perfectly fine solo. In fact, he's still great solo. So don't think you have to include Bloodletters at all. Yeah, he actually, it would be hard to choose what to drop from here. I guess I could drop, like, some of the chaff. Not necessarily have to bring a Great Unclean One. You notice, I wouldn't call this a Monster Mash list. Monster Mash, I think, is like the majority of your list is Monster Mash. I don't really do the Monster Mash style personally. From time to time I do, because it's really damn fun. It looks really cool on the table. But again, as you can see, I really like the chaffy, like, board control scoring style. And truthfully, I've had, like, really good success with it. Anyways, I hope this had some helpful info for you guys. I know it's a little long, but, appreciate you sticking it out if you happen to. As always, if you got any questions, you think I missed anything, maybe I was wrong about something, I'm stupid, and, maybe don't say that, but maybe you disagree on something, go on ahead, leave a comment below. I'd love interacting with you guys. You guys have always been super nice. I will say, I know it's been a while since I posted a video. I do apologize for the wait. I won't get into it, but I had some big life stuff come up, mostly for the better. I had a lot of good stuff happen. Dude, I've lost, like, 60 pounds since, like, New Year's. I freaking got my teeth fixed, like, all this big stuff, changed careers, like, all this big stuff's been going on, mostly for the better. 2024 is going to be a good year for me. Yeah, so far it's been one of the best years. I am going to start making, or I'm hoping to make more content. I'm hoping to do a similar video for CSM. I guess the issue with that is the codex is literally like a month or 2 around the corner, but it would still be fun to revisit CSM and just take a look at how they've been doing. I know they, like, dropped off a cliff, competitively speaking, recently. I don't know how much of that is warranted. Like, okay, a lot of it's warranted, but I do wonder how much of that is, like, just meta chasers leaving the army. That is, like, an unfortunate reality of 40k. And even, a lot of us are guilty of it. I'm sure I'm slightly guilty of it myself. In the past, I'm thinking, I'm not trying to humble bragger. It's like, nah, I like my own armies, but in the past, I've done it. But I do wonder if that's a big reason the win rate went so low. It went down to what, like 33% or something? It got really ugly. But I still had a lot of success with CSM. I do run them in my own way. I really like Possessed and that sort of stuff. But anyways, I'm hoping to get a video out on that. Speaking of, if you guys have any suggestions, recommendations, if there's something you want to see or are curious about, let me know. I'd definitely consider it at the very least. Anyways, again, I appreciate you guys sticking around. If you didn't already, give the video a thumbs up if you could. Consider subscribing if you haven't. And good luck out there, guys, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.